how many people had anxieties and everything else. And I see that coming out again with a lot of these things. And having that experience now has opened my eyes up to what's happening to our society here in the United States as it occurs. So I totally know what you mean by that, because it's very powerful to be able to have that perspective, almost like you're looking down upon the U.S. and
Yeah.
watching all the disparities. So.
And for me, it's about, especially now, not being in the city for this time frame, right? So living in Bangkok is like living in Manhattan.
Yeah.
But living where I do outside of a fishing village,
Yeah.
where people are so earth, I think the closer we get whatever society that we may happen to live in, where, the closer we get to the earth, in terms of our food supply, just natural systems, it's a completely different ecosystem.
Yep.
And so to your point, Tyler, I think people that are living within that symbiotic ecosystem experience the world. But that's why I'm so excited to see the local fishermen using technology
Yeah.
for people to pre-order their fish and deliver. I mean, that to me is just, I'm so inspired by how people are able to kind of live in both worlds. And I think they're the ones that are going to have the competitive advantage going forward, as we've talked about.
Lakeisha, do you also see some of the unintended consequences as they bring it about? And you've seen that happen in the U.S., like when they start using technology. I was in Morocco, and as you expose children, you expose people to some of the technologies that are out there. There's a lot of unintended consequences that happen because they get caught up in those things too, and they don't have those same lifestyles they used to have. So do you see any of that in the fishing village? Because like on the island of Aruba, I'd go to the sea every day and see these young kids swimming in the ocean, just doing that instead of being on TikTok or whatever else.
Definitely,
and they'd be
yeah.
fishing for lobster. Yeah.
Yeah, swimming at, sunset in the sea, I mean, so I think people
Love
are,
it.
they're more grounded in terms of, the present. I mean, it's not to say that kids in Thailand don't have tech, but I think that the level of access and the overall tech addiction, particularly in, areas that are more remote, the levels are less than where people have more access, where children have more access. So people do tend to be more in the present, to your point. Absolutely.
There's a related headline to kind of that point you're talking about, Jeff, and it relates to Thailand, that Food Panda, which is one of the big food delivery systems.
Oh, yeah.
I got to find somebody sent it in, so my apologies. 1 second. Let me get this headline here.
Yeah, no problem. I was also trying to find that one with the Condor Man car inside of a car that I sent you.
Yeah.
I didn't see that post on your Twitter too, so if you find that as well. But
here it
I'm
is.
Curious about the Panda. Yeah.
Okay, so check out Food Panda here. Food Panda is one of our big food delivery things, and it exploded during COVID here, because it partnered with Starbucks very brilliantly. And you could get Starbucks through Food Panda at home. And so now the headline is, first one of the day, just because it's related to the topic of our little banter, pre-show banter here, is that Food Panda faces a boycott now in Thailand because there are protests in Thailand where young people notably, it's being driven out of the universities most notably, want more democracy. They want more control as young. This is, you might think of it like the hippies of my parents' generation, where it's like the young people don't like the old school way, and the young folks want to live in a more democratic society. So anyway, it's very complex. Actually, it would take an hour to even scratch the surface about Thai politics. But to suffice to say that these protests are largely students, and Food Panda basically fired one of their drivers because they discovered this driver had been a protester, and now Thais are boycotting Food Panda for firing this driver, essentially.
And Tyler,
Makes
the
sense.
other piece to that, which is probably connected, was that Food Panda, someone in their communications area, equated the protesters to terrorists.
Yes.
And so I think that's also fueling it. Yeah, so it's going to be interesting. I think it'll be maybe an opportunity for Jay's colleagues over at Grab, which is the other major transport,
Well,
particularly in the food area.
yeah, I let me read this one. It says a major food delivery service in Thailand is facing a boycott after it said on Twitter that an anti-government demonstrator dressed as a food delivery person, meaning wearing the Food Panda jacket, was captured on video trying to set fire on a large image of the king as committing an act of terrorism. And indeed, I find this hard to believe because that not only, I mean, that person will disappear for the rest of their lives if they're caught trying to do that, and every Thai knows that. That's the most. That's suicide. That's the biggest act of suicide I've ever heard of. That's the most. Uh, uh, that's you can't do something more suicidal than that in anywhere on the planet. So it says we're rushing to severely deal with him under company policy. He will be fired immediately. Please, and in this case, actually, Thais would understand this. Actually, generally, like this is a whole different situation when it relates to royalty. So we're rushing to severely deal with him under the current policy. He will be fired immediately. Please note that Food Panda has a policy against violence of all types of terrorism and will be happy to assist officers in prosecuting the offender. Food Panda tweeted from its account. This was soon followed by Thai Twitter hashtag Ban Food Panda, which reached 1.25 million mentions by Monday noon, despite the company's apology, which came hours later on both Twitter and the page. So somebody named Ton Padawat has a video of a person, lighting fire to. In Thailand, we have images of the king everywhere, and they are very ornately designed with flowers all around them and these really gold leaf, silver and gold, like these really intricate decorative photos of the king. And there's like ribbons all around them. And there is a video of somebody trying to set fire to one of the ribbons that is on one of these ornate, kind of, I don't know what you would call them. They're not statues. It's a photo. It's like a photo built into like a big image of the king. What's the right word for these things, Lakeisha? It's like a
Yeah, I
Effigy?
don't know. It's
Is
like
it an
a
effigy?
giant-sized
an
billboard
effigy.
photo
Yes,
frame. Okay,
yes,
there we go.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a large effigy, and then somebody setting fire to the ribbons around the edge of the effigy, which one would assume those will catch on fire, and then the whole thing will catch on fire. And anyway, it goes on. We apologize for the previous message from our team, which was posted, and now they're apologizing as a result of people banning Food Panda. We're still investigating the incident and seek pardon for the comment and for not thoroughly concluding about the previous incident. Some restaurants have some Food Panda delivery staff said that due to the administration's actions, they now left work without they left without work due to the boycott, meaning they just are no longer working for Food Panda. And one person says, I'm running out of cash to the point where I have hardly any left for apartment rent and food. I don't have anything left. The boycott trend is strong. Only death can rescue me. What the hell do you do? What the hell did you do, Food Panda page administrator, wrote Facebook user, and Facebook post was shared 16,000 times. Another Food Panda writer posted a photo of himself in a Food Panda jacket and flashing three-finger salute, a symbol of Thai, the anti-government reform movement, a symbol of the Thai. This is the problem with Thai.
Yeah.
The English isn't the strongest language here in Thailand, so there's errors in the article. And says, I love the jacket. It enables me to make a living. I love working as a writer under Food Panda's name, but I hate companies that see people as terrorists. If I end up losing my job because of the stupidity and selfishness of this lousy company, I will gladly embrace it, wrote one person on Facebook. Food Panda Thailand apologized on Monday via Twitter, saying, Food Panda assures freedom of speech and expression is not terrorism, and freedom it's not terrorism, and the writer will not be dismissed due to this incident. So they backtracked due to the strong backlash from people, and it's an interesting case of the power of both social media and the the challenge of now these gig economy players are in a really interesting position. And Jay's flashing his mic because Jay works at Food Panda's bigger competitor called Grab, which is also, I think, Grab. Jay, you obviously might not be able to say anything because Food Panda and Grab are the two big food delivery systems in Thailand, and Jay happens to be rather senior at Grab. And so, Jay, I understand if you can't say anything at all, but
I can say some things. I mean, back when we redesigned food, right, our biggest competitor was actually linemen. And as you know, linemen's like such a big deal out in Thailand. So I will just say that it is unfortunate because I'm one of those people that does enjoy competition and wants to see competitors succeed out here. But I think it's a tightrope that a lot of us companies out in Southeast Asia have to walk, right? Because like you've talked about, right, like the governments really do have more say out here versus like, let's say in America. So it's a bit of a challenge. And one thing I do want to add is like, I'm actually not on e-commerce anymore. I'm actually doing facial recognition, all this stuff that you've been talking about. And I haven't been able to say much because we are in collaboration with Microsoft, and it also boils down to governments. But all I can say is, it's some things that we try to do can't fly because of the government, right? And it really does, the regulations and actually talking to the governments does matter. And not a lot of people know, I think you would probably know, but Thailand just legalized ride hailing like this year, I believe, right? So it's been a fascinating, I guess, adventure for a lot of us at Grab just to, get it legalized, specifically in Thailand. So it's something that a lot of companies have to, figure out before they come out here.
Well,
Jay, I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Tyler, go ahead.
Go.
Yeah, no. So, Jay, so I'm curious, always inspired by people who try and run, these fast growth businesses in Asia. Not try, they actually run them and grow them. From my brief experience in the Asia, because it's just such a great way to learn how to run global businesses, right? Because you hit all the issues very quickly, very fast, and you become a much more kind of faster. You can deal with all these tough issues that in the US maybe somebody growing a company in Silicon Valley suddenly hits a global issue. Oh, well, we got to talk to a government. Let's hire a new person that can actually talk, understand politics and understand where that's going. Jay, I imagine that you're growing. You guys are ambitious, right? Grab's ambitious, and I'm not compromising anything about you as a thing. Just it's open. You're out there. You want to grow in African countries. You want to grow in other countries. Just as an investor, when I look at some of the ambitions you guys have. So does that mean you guys kind of are you guys growing like the capability, because you've already learned how to work with the government there, right? And all the things you just mentioned and the nuances and the trade-offs, etc. Is that like a big part? You have a big division, big set of people. Do you train all the leaders to understand, how would you work in Nigeria? How would you work in, these countries? So I'm just very curious. I didn't want to take this down that path, but I get curious about those kind of things. And Jay, since you're here, did you guys doing that? I imagine,
Well,
right?
I have, again, I can't really talk about what their plans are, but I do know that the CEOs do go through a lot of, let's say, training in terms of communicating with certain like leaders, right? And as most people know, like I believe Anthony Tan, the CEO of Grab, was at Davos, right? I believe, was it the year before the pandemic? So there is that type of relationship thing that does happen. And it's very similar to China, right, Cal? So you need to know the who's who, right? So I think that does happen behind the scenes. And that's pretty much all I can say. So
Yeah, no. So I just give you a big kudos. Like you guys, that kind of training will make you a better global player than some of the challenges the kind of US players grown in the US going global will have, like Uber or somebody else. But anyway, yeah, well done, man.
Jay, I wanted to ask you this about Myanmar. Ung Long Sang is a fighter that I got to meet in Florida, and he fights for Myanmar and Burma and everything. And he's an amazing guy. I got to meet him and his family. and he just told me of the struggles over there. So I noticed your podcast, so I just wanted to say hello. And do you do that often, your podcast?
Yeah, I do. Feel free to let's DM. Feel free to reach out. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you. Thanks,
Jay, you mentioned something I just have to try and poke at, which is the facial recognition part, because that could play into this particular headline, actually, which is no doubt Thailand will soon have facial recognition kind of everywhere. And and I'm not picking on Thailand. No doubt facial recognition will be everywhere on the planet in the near future. And if it did exist in this situation, then Food Panda wouldn't have to have done anything. They could just sit back and be like, the cameras are going to take care of this. We don't really need to do anything, and could have avoided this whole situation essentially. Um, it's. I wonder. There's all kinds of interesting ways that there's so many benefits to facial recognition. For example, in the deliveries, right? Like if some people have a camera on their front door and somebody does the delivery, it recognizes the driver, it records it, it knows who it was. Anyone else who comes and steals anything off the front porch, it's known who stole it. I mean, we could really debate the benefits and the pluses and minuses of a facial recognition system around the planet. By the way, look at London is covered in cameras. I mean, China is more than anywhere, but so is London, as any Londoner will easily admit. And was that a plus or a minus? And adding facial recognition to those cameras is essentially just making those cameras smarter, a whole lot smarter, a whole lot more effective. I don't. That is, it's a really. Of course, there are obvious to adding facial recognition. Everything everyone does in terms of walking around the city, you have a whole lot of loss of privacy, and there's a whole lot of gain of safety potentially. I mean, crime would become much more difficult to commit, especially if they add gait recognition, meaning which they can do, and they have done in Hong Kong, for example, where it can identify you by the way that you walk. So covering your face isn't going to, like Evan's doing here on stage, isn't going to help if you're, robbing a supermarket or whatever. But anyway, I wonder, now that you're working in it, what kind of thoughts go through your mind as you're working on it?
All right, that is a great question. So I think it boils down to governments, right, Tyler?
Uh-huh.
Like we've talked about it. I think with Thailand, though, they have a different verification system. So I actually worked on the alcohol delivery stuff, and you actually have to verify, the youth if they're younger than 18
Right.
and whatnot. So when people actually sign up in Thailand to verify who they are, they actually have to take a photo of their ID. So they actually don't do the facial recognition versus, like, let's say, I don't know, Malaysia, where you actually have to take a photo to verify yourself.
Yeah. And
so
by the way, anyone who's ever visited Thailand knows they record your face when you enter through the airports with a little camera. Everyone has to smile and look at the camera. And now they also added fingerprints starting about a year ago. So everybody's fingerprints.
Temperatures for COVID.
Yeah, but the cameras at every port in Thailand has been doing face recording for quite a while, for several years now, and now they just added the fingerprint bit about a year ago for everybody. But anyway, I just wanted, just so people know that there's a bit of it already. But sorry to interrupt you, Jay.
Yeah, no worries. What I can say is I'm working on something related to surveillance. Yeah. That's all I can say. But let's just say that, governments will have the final say in everything that we do. So regardless if it comes out or not, I think I've just learned so much. And also all the stuff that you were talking about with facial recognition and how helpful it is, I think it is super helpful, and it does solve a lot of the cases, whether it's rape, crime, a passenger attacking a driver or vice versa. But it boils down just to the government, and that's how powerful the governments are out here. And people don't realize that until they come out here. And Uber realized that when they failed out here. So I think that's something people need to consider. But yeah.
And you're right, because if you have a very benevolent government, then it's not really a problem. It's all win-win. Most of the potential downside most of the negatives disappear if you have a very friendly government. And I'm trying to think of what would be an ideal, very friendly government that everybody trusts. I guess Sweden. Sweden would likely not have a problem with facial recognition because they actually really trust the government. Government's really never really done anything egregious against Swedes. They work on behalf of the people. Norway as well. And it'd be a whole more the balance of upside and downside shiftly to the upside in a government that's very benevolent. The opposite is also true, of course, where if you have governments that have histories of using information against people or have rather authoritarian tendencies, then you start to amplify the negatives of the technology rather than the positives. So you're right, it is entirely down to the government and how they use that information. Yeah.
And it's also connected to what you also talked about, right? Because there is this partnership with larger tech companies, and that comes into play with larger tech companies having that juicy data, right? So I think that's something that people need to realize, that these partnerships do matter long term.
Yep. Okay, so there's someone in the audience named Safe who's DMing me that he's got a headline to share. So Safe, have you been listening to Tech News Around the World before? Is today your first day?
Yes. Trying almost all of be here all the time.
Okay.
First of all, thank you for inviting me upstage.
Sure.
It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, what's up?
So I was in a room before this, which was titled "The Future of Food and Hospitality."
Uh-huh.
And one of the gentlemen from the audience came up to the stage, and he said his friend in India, he actually developed or created honey by understanding how bees make them in the first place. So it spooked out the whole room, and then I reached out to him, and I told him on the stage if he can share some sample with me so that I can test it. And I'm waiting on the sample.
So it's honey made without bees, but it's real honey?
Yes. So the process, exactly how the bees do it, that is what he claims. So I thought that is interesting to worth a share. And then the conversation later went on to the ethical of vegan bees, vegan
wild.
honey. Sorry.
Yeah.
So synthetic honey.
Yeah, synthetic honey.
It is basically he was trying to argue that it is kind of artificial honey, but exactly the process how bees make it.
Can you try and ping him into the room? It'd be fantastic to hear what that's about.
I'm afraid I didn't follow him. So if I hear from him on
that could be useful technology once all the bees that die as a result of our other unintended technologies.
The problem is you're going to have to figure out how to pollinate all of our plants at the same time. Now,
yeah, well, hey, one step at a time, Jeff. We can figure that out.
Extracting pollen. He was talking about extracting pollen and such. So I will reach out to him now and see if he's available to get into the room.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you for that. That's a wild idea. I had never heard of that. Although it makes a lot of sense because the bees they're not exactly doing magic to make honey. Like there's certainly something you can observe with cameras to see what it is they're doing and replace it with little drone.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's wild.
And then we had another expert who also said, I asked the question.
But I think wait. Isn't honey like bee vomit? They actually it comes out of their stomach. That could be difficult to replicate.
So he said that it is their food. And that is the answer to vegan honey, and the ethics around that topic.
Okay. Well, we shall see. Now let's get into the top 10 headlines of the day, of the moment, of right now, of happy Thursday, everybody, July 22nd. There's a bunch of top headlines as we do each day. These are the ones that everybody's talking about on the planet, like your coworkers and your stupid cousins and whatnot. So just to be informed with what all the regular folks are talking about, we're going to go through them in order from the most talked about, doing the top 10. And then we're going to go into the actual interesting articles that the more savvy geeks have found all around the interwebs. And those are far more interesting and are more helpful in figuring out where the world is going day by day. But before we get into the top 10, is anyone particularly burning with one that we need to dive into before we get into the top 10? No? Going once? Going twice?
Well, I sent you one on TikTok's algorithms.
Okay.
I thought that was interesting.
What is it?
It basically, I think it was the Wall Street Journal,
Hmm?
and it's mostly a video that they attached to an article. They basically said how the TikTok algorithms work because they created like a bunch of dummy accounts, and they did bots, and they said it comes down to basically one thing. All the other stuff that people think matters, followers, all of that doesn't matter. Basically, the thing that matters most is how much time you spent looking at a particular video, and they use that kind of video. Like if it's a video about car racing, they if you watch it for 60 seconds or you replay it, they figure out you're interested in that. And then if there's a video on dogs and you skip that, they know you're not interested in that. So it's all they figure out what to show you based on your history of what you watch, not more than anything else.
Okay, yeah, it makes some sense. And by the way, we're gonna see a lot more of this because it's going to become very valuable to deconstruct the algorithms, because Instagram influencers you see it here in Clubhouse, by the way. There's rooms all the time about Clubhouse, Instagram secrets of how to become more influential on Instagram. And, what they're doing is they're figuring out the algorithm so that they can figure out how to be more visible, gain more visibility inside of Instagram, for example, or TikTok or Snapchat or whatever. And that's fine, but all they're going to get is likes and hearts and follows. Now, that's, as you know, if you follow us here every day at Tech News Around the World, that's very soon about to become e-commerce, meaning it's not just hearts and likes and follows, it's dollar bills, y'all. It's going to be raining, making it rain, making cash money. And then all of a sudden, you're going to see an absolute obsession about these algorithms in a way that, because it's now people's livelihoods, right? So the amount of attention paid to these algorithms is going to go berserk, and it's going to become incredibly valuable information to figure out, how do I get 10% more visibility? Because that's 10% more money in your pocket. In the case that you're building your business on these apps, 10% more income is not trivial. So you can understand why people are going to become obsessed with these algorithms and start to do all kinds of crazy things. And you're even going to have some of the employees, those companies need to understand that their algorithm, the amount of focus and attention that people are paying on those algorithms now, nobody's actually willing to cyber hack them to figure out their algorithms just to get more followers. But when there's millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars at stake, yeah, people are going to cyber attack you to try and figure out, get inside the algorithms. They're going to be interviewing your employees who work on those teams. Shit's going to go bananas. And they need to start looking at their algorithms much more closely in the same way that Google does around their search algorithm. Because that is one place where people do make real money, is in what's called SEO. And SEO, search engine optimization, is an entire industry related to one company, which is Google. Because they're really the only search. When we say SEO, it applies to Google and really nobody else. And that's an industry.
About a month ago,
Yeah.
ByteDance, I don't remember, I think we talked about it,
Yes.
but about a month ago, ByteDance packaged up all of its APIs related to AI and basically made them available for anyone that wants to plug them into any application.
Yes.
And there is tons of stuff. It goes right across everything they do, from music to TikTok to the algorithms for videos, etc. I would imagine that's what they've used here to run the bots against. And it's going to be fascinating to see what people start plugging all of those APIs into and start building on top. But,
this is Michelle speaking.
Hey,
Just
Michelle.
to add something quickly on that, I think that's already the case when it comes to advertising. And the reality is that those algorithms are dynamics, because we know obviously that people are trying to understand how the ranking works.
They change.
I think the downside is people giving advice, and obviously it's not like we'll correct the advice we get because there are so many experts in the algorithm, but I think only barely 20% of what they're sharing is accurate. But
correct, yeah, and as you said, they're dynamic. They change all the time, like on a weekly basis. And let me give you a humdinger of a story. The startup that I was part of in 2007, we figured out Google's algorithm. It wasn't that complex back in 2007. And we realized that a key thing, and they were actually a bit transparent about it at the time, because back in 2007, there wasn't a tremendous emphasis on SEO back then, because there wasn't a lot of money to be made on the internet like there is today. So it wasn't as frothy, you could say. So anyway, the algorithm was much more simple back then. They were a little more transparent back then. And there were bloggers who used to work at Google who even would say on their blog, like, here's, some of the things we did and blah, blah, blah. So we built a company similar to Wikipedia. And no doubt you remember that Wikipedia used to get a lot of traffic back in 2007. Like, it was usually in the top 3 for most of the stuff you searched for. You remember this back then, where there was always right? So the reason for that is because back then the algorithm within Google was the more pages that linked to your page, the higher you would rank, essentially, to oversimplify it. But that was certainly one of the key variables in the algebraic equation, which is if you can get 1,000 pages to link to you or 10,000 pages to link to you, that's a high signal of quality to Google to rank your page very highly. Especially if the link, how a link it's a hyperlink, and the link itself can be a word. So if they're linking to your page with the word, I don't know, honey, and so you've got 10,000 pages all linking to you with the word honey, then your page probably should rank really high when somebody searches on Google for honey. It's called inbound links, right? With anchor text. So Wikipedia does this, because when you're on Wikipedia and you're reading an article about, World War II, there's a link about, Auschwitz or whatever. And, all the other pages on Wikipedia that mention Auschwitz all link to the Auschwitz page, and it gets ranked very highly, right? Makes sense. Now, when taking that same idea, most entities on the internet are only 10 pages long. Most websites are only 10, 20 pages, maybe there's some that get up to 30, but Wikipedia was 100,000 pages. And that gave them this advantage of having, so many inbound links to all their internal pages. And that's why it ranks so high. I think you understand where I'm going with. So we made a company that was similar to Wikipedia in format, based on the Wikia, the architecture. And it was kind of like a Wikipedia for making a search engine. Imagine how Wikipedia has links at the bottom of every article. It's like, here's like 3 more links, stories related to this topic. And those are hand selected by a human editor who found 3 really good links. They're usually very high quality. They're usually the 3 best links you can find on the internet about whatever's at the bottom of that article. And that was sort of the idea. Is what if we took 20 links, the 20 best links, and had a human go around the web and find the 20 best links and put those together? And we did that. We were making tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of pages, and we built this huge thing, and they were all linking to each other. And we started ranking number 1 for everything. And Google realized, we don't like this. Now you have a company who raised $20 million building a huge website, far bigger than a normal website, with hundreds of thousands of pages all linking to each other. Of course, they're going to rank number 1 for everything. And Google realized we need to change the algorithm, because the people writing those pages are not experts on the topics they're writing about, right? You have some nobody writing a page about golf, and that shouldn't be that way. If Tiger Woods writes a page about golf, he should rank number 1, regardless of which website he's on. So they had to fundamentally change their complete reimagination of the algorithm, so that it was based on the individual and the expertness, or the authenticity of the experts. Value is the basis of the page, not the architecture of the website and how many inbound links that it has. So they fundamentally changed it, and then a lot of companies died very quickly as a result of that. There you go. But yes, keep in mind that these algorithms fundamentally change. And when people start gaming and and it gets too lucrative you can go out and raise money to build a thing on top of this. That's what's going to happen here. Now that these sites are going to become e-commerce, you're going to have people building huge businesses on top of TikTok and Instagram and Snapchat, because they're e-commerce, and they're going to become experts in those algorithms. And then it might give asymmetrical advantages, because the big companies that have raised money now have resources to hire teams of experts to become masters of those algorithms. And that might mean that the best products and services aren't what appear. It's what will appear as whoever was able to hire these experts of the algorithms. And now you see the problem. So then the app says, the really good content, the really good products are kind of hidden because they can't afford to hire experts to figure out our algorithms. And then they have to continue to play this cat and mouse game of updating their algorithms to give a fair advantage to everybody and kind of use their experts' knowledge against them almost. And that's what happened in SEO, in fact. So it's wild.
And just a
Yeah.
quick one on that. So I think you have a point there. So that's why we call it best practices. We have the best practices, and some companies can afford having the expert that can actually help them rank high. But I managed to hack the algorithm. Usually I would say most of it is BS because that doesn't work that way, So that's kind of what I want to clarify.
What they start doing is the apps, meaning Facebook and Google, and soon we can add Instagram and Snapchat and all of these, they'll start watching what the quote unquote experts are doing in terms of their behavior and then say, okay, here's what the experts are doing. Okay, if you're doing that, then we know you're experts. Okay, so we need to actually use that as a signifier of lower quality. And it kind of becomes self-defeating. It's wild how the algorithms mature to a state where if you really start doing all of what is supposed to be what an expert would do, it actually starts slightly penalizing you in a weird way, and it becomes this really interesting evolution of the algorithm. So anyway, going into let's do the top 10 stories. Thank you. Yes, Mahogany.
I have a quick one.
Go.
For my professional geography. Finally, after the announcement in December of the Salesforce and Slack acquisition, it closed yesterday.
That's right.
And so folks are like, why did that take so long? I don't have insight there, but what this means now is that Salesforce is going to officially start talking about their bigger plans, which is basically like integrating Slack throughout all of their suite of products. That's it.
Yeah, so if you were a Slack shareholder like myself, you woke up and realized, where did my Slack stock go? It's now become Salesforce stock. And you're like, I don't own Salesforce. What the hell happened here? And then you remember, Salesforce bought Slack. And so now you're holding a bunch of shares of Salesforce when you previously held shares of Slack. And Salesforce has been on a tear, for the past decade, but they bought Slack because it's not easy, it's barely even possible to contain that level of growth of Salesforce, which is why they bought Slack, because Slack is a potential avenue to more growth. And now Salesforce has reached that stage of maturity as a big tech company where it becomes difficult to maintain growth because they've dominated one particular industry. They've got to diversify and get into other fast-growing industries and start buying up the lead horses in those other industries, like they bought Slack. And I think it's a good acquisition, but they're going to have to buy 5 more like that to maintain the level of growth that Salesforce had.
Tyler, yeah. I noticed that Messi had unmuted and she was going to say something.
Good
I wanted to give her a chance. And also the flags, if everybody checks their flags, I noticed, Messi, you have an interesting flag. So does Shane. Whatever your first flag is in your bio, and I noticed a whole bunch of people have flags in there. And just check what your first flag is. That's now showing up on your profile. So if you intended it to be there for some other reason, like I noticed they had plus and minuses and adding a couple flags together for different stuff, make sure the flag you want displayed is in the front, or eliminate all flags from your bio so they don't show up on your profile photo. That's my news.
Yeah,
thank you. Go ahead,
So Jeff broke some news here when we met last time about 12 hours ago, which is there's a new update to Clubhouse. And this is one of the big headlines of the day. In fact, this is the second biggest story in all of tech at the moment. So let's just go to number 2 and then we'll go back to number 1. Here's the second biggest story of the day. Let's do it. Are we ready? Let's do
Don't forget Messi.
Here we go. All right. hold that thought, Messi. We've got Clubhouse is no longer invite only as it exits beta. It's officially Clubhouse 1.0 is the app version. And it says that 10 million people on the wait list will be added to the app over time. And Clubhouse is going wide. The co-founders announced today that the app is no longer invite only. You don't need an invite at all. Anyone can download it and start using it. And that's all gravy. And they've added some new features to the new version of 1.0 that we're now on, which is, as Jeff was just saying, most people have flags next to their face, so you can see ostensibly what country they're from. However, the flag has been determined is a result of whatever flag you have listed in your bio, if you have any. The first flag chronologically in your bio will be put as the flag on your face. So be mindful of that. And then also, whatever you have put your settings to in Apple iOS also has some bearing on it, because the folks in Taiwan have a Taiwanese flag, but there's some Taiwanese who had their phone set to China, and when they set their phone to China, the Taiwanese flag disappears. It turns into a little box with an X over it. And there was some people trying to investigate, is Clubhouse anti-Taiwan or something like that? Turns out that's not the case. It's just that in China, the Taiwanese flag doesn't exist in the iPhone itself. So it's clearly has something to do with the settings of what you say your country is in the phone itself. As a
quick comment on
Yeah.
on that, if that's
Yeah.
all right. Coach, I think you're going to be explaining that forever. The way that works is just consider a show flag on profile question mark set in the settings, and then if you set that, you choose your flag, and then all of this goes away. Just as simple. The UX of it scanning your profile and finding the first flag, I think it's going to always. You're going to be in Clubhouse rooms all day forever explaining that, I reckon. Anyway,
Yeah.
just a thought.
Okay.
Yeah, and then they can change that to something else or whatever they want. So it's just flags right now for the Olympics is what they explained.
I see, the Olympics. Yeah.
So yeah, and I imagine if they wanted to point it at some other type of emoji, they could do that. And that's why the UN flag, and then it looks like a California flag for Shane or something else. All these interesting flags can be underneath there. Oh, you probably find the LGBTQ flag as well, so that'd be interesting.
So the rainbow flag doesn't work, and this is a flag for
Darn it.
Antarctica. It's scientifically neutral, is why I selected it.
Oh wow, cool.
So the top story, going back to story number 1, Twitter is testing a way to downvote tweets on iOS to understand the types of replies users find relevant to the conversation. And I'm going to tweet this out on Twitter right now, so you kind of got to see what I'm talking about. And let me explain it verbally for those who are unable to check our Twitter account, because I just tweeted this one out. And basically, when you're looking at a Twitter feed, what you will notice is, hang on. And by the way, the source of this, as usual, is our friend Jane Wong from Hong Kong. And they're testing all kinds. And by the way, the team at Twitter who is designing this responded to Jane. And I tweeted this out, I think, a few hours ago when I saw that Jane had discovered this. And it included the team member at Twitter who's building this said to her exactly. Jane said, "Oh, holy cow, you can now give a negative reaction to a comment on a tweet." So somebody does a tweet, and then somebody replies to the tweet, and maybe you have 5 people reply to the tweet. And now when somebody replies to a tweet, when you're looking at those replies, there's an up arrow and a down arrow, like on Reddit. There's also a thumbs up or a thumbs down, depending. They're beta testing. They're what's doing called ABCD testing, where they're putting out all kinds of options on different users around the planet to see which one gets the most engagement. Do people like the arrows up and down to, vote on a reply to a tweet, or do they like, thumbs up and thumbs down, more of a Facebook style or YouTube style, which uses thumbs up and thumbs down, or arrows like they do on Reddit, or hearts like Twitter's traditionally done. But interestingly, it seems that we will likely be able to all vote on the replies of tweets, and even give negatives, which is kind of interesting. And maybe the most liked one will come to the top. But the brilliance of this is that now it inspires users to give very thoughtful replies to tweets. Because if you give a thoughtful reply to a tweet, people will vote it up, and it'll be very visible, and you'll be the first reply to the tweet because you have 25 thumbs ups or arrows ups or likes or whatever. And then you start getting a lot more visibility inside of Twitter, because now what's going to happen is every celebrity who tweets, who has lots of followers, this now essentially becomes a competition to have the most liked reply. Because currently the replies are chronological. You see who replied first, and then second, and then third or fourth, for the most part. And now, if you have a very witty response or an insightful response, you get to be the first reply. Then people see who you are, and it's going to gamify. It adds a gaming layer to Twitter that doesn't quite exist today. So sorry, who did I interrupt there?
Oh, it's okay, Tyler. What I was going to say is this is super interesting because what you said about upvote and downvote, that's how it is in Reddit.
Right.
So it's a very interesting dynamic because I think it also allows people to really, like you just said, stop and read what they're retweeting or what they're liking. So it does give an essence of that someone actually also is reading it instead of just blindly going in, like for the bots, for example. Like bots can also upvote, can also go all over Twitter and all over Instagram and start commenting on things because that's how people
Amy,
build
you
followers.
just figured something out. Two things you just implied there that are really, really,
and there's
really...
another feature, Tyler, regarding reading, which I noticed yesterday, which is that if I went to just retweet an article you'd sent out from the BBC, I thought, it's BBC, I've heard it before, I trust this article. I'll just click retweet. And Twitter said, you're retweeting something you haven't read, mate.
Yeah.
Are you sure you want to do that? And,
yes.
And
that's quite old.
Just to throw that in.
That one's
is that quite old. Is it?
I've had that for
that one's
many months.
Been there before.
Yeah.
I've never seen that one before.
But and that's a lovely feature that they have. However, to your point, Ame, is obviously one of the other benefits of doing this is people who leave really stupid comments will get voted down, and they'll learn that they're an idiot because everyone keeps voting their stuff down, and it'll push their comments down. And we don't have to see their comments, which is that it kind of fixes that kind of problem of stupid comments as well. But to your point is, assumedly, ostensibly, bots will come in and start liking, stuff and down liking other stuff, right? And you could get really clever, crafty hacker types, making bot armies to come in and upvote and downvote stuff, unless they do identity verification inside Twitter and they're able to stop all those bots, because bots would wreak havoc with all of that upvoting and downvoting.
Bots have corrupted the entire advertising system since advertising for clicks has existed, and now that Apple's basically obscuring that data from a large portion of these sites, they're having to find other strategies, right? And that's part of it too. So bots are going to become useless on, to penetrate Twitter the way they penetrate Reddit right now, right? Reddit's famous for bots, downvoting stuff. And, you're going to have much more focus on this identity so that everything that's going on is actually humans are doing it. So if they do it, they have the accountability and traceability to a identified human.
Yes, but I'm wondering if them adding this functionality implies that they have aspirations of bringing in identity verification, because they must know that doing this.
I had my own personal belief that they were going to bring in identity verification as well as crypto, and essentially it's like, okay, well, if a certain high profile individual who may or may not have formerly been our president, instead of silencing him from a platform, make him pay more to tweet. And, you have a crypto system and basically, that becomes how you enforce the identity as well as punish those that you don't want to hear from. So it's that concept you described, Tyler, as the difference between freedom of speech and freedom of reach.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my 2 cents. I'm sorry. I've been out for a couple
Hey,
days.
Tyler,
I'm excited to be back.
Ex-Twitter employee here. I worked at Twitter.
Jay worked at Twitter.
2013. So they actually did experiment with this. This conversation came up, and I think there were a lot of issues with what Ame just mentioned, right? The bot thing was definitely a consideration back then.
Yep.
Along with that, then there's the debate between favorites versus upvotes, downvotes, right? So I think we did try to A/B test it back then, but unfortunately, they're just like, we're just not going to focus our attention to it. But it's very fascinating to see it come back to now, and it's going to be fascinating to see what they do with the subscription model. Twitter Blue Sky with this as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh, right. Well, Blue Sky is decentralized Twitter for those who.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Amy.
to Jay's point, I totally agree, because the strategic component of it, which, Jay's already they saw it, they didn't see it valuable. They didn't probably proactively see the forecast of the way the industry was going. And now they're sort of a bit backpedaling to pick it back up and sort of going a little bit fast and a little bit maybe chaotic for some because they're testing a couple of things at once. However, to the point of blue sky and decentralizing it, it does give the possibility of what Jack's bigger vision could be, because that's where you start to see where the bigger vision is. Because if the bigger vision is to make this decentralized at some point, they're going to have to start adding tools in, or they're going to have to start seeing what tools work, what interoperability they have, how they could be scaled, how they could be safe. So I think, to Jay's point, they're probably seeing like, oh shit, we should have done this before. And now they're like, okay, let's do more of it now so that we can at least proactively know what's going on for our product as it moves forward.
Mm-hmm. So, number 3 article, the FTC formally pledges to fight unlawful right to repair restrictions, says that it will use its power to lower repair costs and support independent repair shops. I personally like this. Let's debate it. Because
Yeah, I'm a fan of that too.
yeah, the Apple has gone, me personally, if you live in a city with an Apple store, you're consider yourself very lucky. That's most of the world doesn't have that opportunity. Even Apple users who live in parts of the world without Apple stores, you're pretty much fucked because Apple insists on you taking it to them to repair it. That's fine if you have one to go to. What if you happen to live in a place where it takes an airplane to get to an Apple store?
Also, Tyler,
Yeah.
there was the argument that these companies like Apple was making is that if you don't go with an authorized retailer who fixes your phone through us, then you run some risks. And there was a case where a woman did that, and nude photos of her were uploaded to her Facebook account as a result by the technicians fixing her phone. So that whole point about we do things more securely is now moot. That wasn't the only one, but it was the most recent and drastic one. So I think they're losing ground when it comes to we do it best. We have your best interest in mind and that sort of thing. I'm done speaking.
Yeah. So, but most
There is another.
Go
Sorry,
ahead.
Tyler.
Go ahead, Ben.
Well, there's another thing to throw in the mix, which is actually doing it yourself. I mean, you don't have to be an Uber geek. You have to have the confidence of an Uber geek, but you don't have to be an Uber geek when it comes down to it. There are kits on Amazon where you can like replace a phone battery or whatever. The older the phone, the easier it is to do. As they've got more and more waterproof, the glue has got stronger and stronger. Pulling the screen off requires more and more heat, which gets more and more unnerving. But if you've got the confidence to do it and you don't mind following some simple instructions, you can do this shit yourself. And to get an example, a battery change with all the gear needed to do it, which comes in a kit off Amazon, is like $30, $35, something like that. So it can be ridiculously cheap and no one's going to upload your photos. But it is getting much harder with time, not only because glues are getting stronger, but also iPhone parts. Some of the parts are now digitally coded to that particular device. So you can't swap out the camera module or this module or that module from one iPhone to another because they're all digitally coded together at the factory for, in quotes, security, but that might have a big impact on your ability to repair.
You bring up an interesting point, though, Ben, because the hardware manufacturers, hint, hint, Apple, will likely if this goes through, it has gone through, it's official, like they're doing this. They formally adopt the right to repair thing. And now you might see Apple get very creative about the incredibly interesting types of screws that they use to undo these, to open these devices.
It's beyond the screws, though. Like, for example, on the MacBook Airs and everything else, they've gone to soldered on RAM, which is like almost unheard of in traditional, PCs and stuff.
Right.
And that's purely like, to keep you from upgrading it.
Right. So they're going to get very crafty in designing the devices to make it actually very difficult for you to repair
no
yourself.
Connectors, no connectors,
unibody.
Like
the whole
Ben
thing's
was saying,
be
super glue. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be one big unibody printed device that there's nothing to
repair.
That's
the M1, right? The M1's a system on a chip. I mean, all the RAM's on there, the GPU's on there, the CPU's on there. So the less and less discrete components, and you can be absolutely sure that an individual can't do anything to a system on a chip. I mean, you just don't have the facilities to even begin.
Someone did do a RAM swap on it, but it took, like you said, a crazy facility.
But the reality is the vast majority of repairs are the screen and then the battery. I mean, that those two alone cover
Yeah.
90% of phone repairs. So let people change their goddamn broken screens and fix their batteries. Holy cow. And if they don't, and they go the opposite direction and do what we're suggesting, is actually intentionally make it more difficult, I think you're going to start seeing people switching off of iPhones to other devices that do make it more easy to do that. So
They
it's
just want they want to push Apple Care though, right? Because Apple Care is now like a
too.
$9 a month service, and if you think of it like as insurance, then
And that's fine if you are near a place where you can do that. Because
No, you're right. You're right, Tyler.
I think that's the fork in the road, Tyler. If you're near, I mean, I'm 15 minutes from an Apple store, so I buy a new iPhone every 2 or 3 years because I think buying one every year is egregious. And when I have an issue, you take it down. Apple Care is actually pretty good in that case. I dropped my phone, front and back were broken. They're just like, I'll just swap the whole phone out. They're pretty, if you pay through the nose for the Apple Care. But if you're not near one of those Apple stores, I think that's a hugely different experience suddenly. You're interposting your phone off somewhere, etc. So I totally agree with that.
I've got a rare confession that there actually is a major downside to living on a remote tropical island is there's no Apple stores here. So and when your phone gets broken and you find the nearest authorized repair center is many, many hours away, and you get to that repair center and you let them repair their phone, and unfortunately that repair person is really subpar to other people or even yourself in being able to repair the phone, it becomes incredibly frustrating. And then the option is, okay, if the phone, you have to do these insurance schemes with the actual mobile carrier that you buy the phone from, like you go to the local Orange shop near you, or the AT&T shop or whatever, and they have an insurance policy, which is if something happens, you can pay this small, you buy the insurance from them, and they have shops around that you can get to, and then you pay a little fee and you get a brand new phone. Or you do another plan is your broken device, you then just mail to a friend who lives near a store, and you say Merry Christmas, early birthday present to you, and you buy a new device. Or you do the both and you get the it's wild. Thank God they're changing this, and so because it is not complicated to replace a screen, and it certainly shouldn't be, and nor should the battery be, and that is the overwhelming 90%.
Tyler,
Yes.
I think what Apple is have been looking for is reliable partners to do it, so they can protect their reputation. In the US, they did the deal with Geek Squad and Best Buy, and so you can take it there, and that allows you to get to whatever 1,000 different stores, and you might be able to find somebody locally, and they can actually do one big deal. And I know the Geek Squad agents are Apple trained and have to be pretty high standards, and so there's like kind of a reliable brand. But that they found really hard to find globally. I remember way back in the early discussions in China, Apple was very supportive of us, going fast and furious in opening up Best Buy stores in China when we talked to their leadership at the time, because of that. They couldn't open up enough of that, but then they went off to open up a whole bunch of theirs. But they're not. You're right. It's not very local. With Best Buy in the US, you might have a better service there, but
Yeah,
it's a tough experience.
Let's move it on, Chris.
Oh, last one is GameStop also kind of comes into the equation, is because if they're really trying to change up their business model, that was my thought, is that if they offered mobile repairs, this would really open up their business too.
Yeah. So next big article is that Grindr, which you think of Tinder for the homosexual community, has a track record of saying that they share data with brokers. Oh, lovely. But they say that the data is encrypted and unidentifiable, despite the use of such data to out a Catholic priest. Yesterday, 24 hours ago, we read the headline from the Washington Post and the New York Times and other that a top U.S. Catholic Church official resigns after the Catholic blog had identified him through his Grindr app data. And so now that puts a little pressure on Grindr as to say, hey, your data is being used to out your own community. So what do you have to say for yourself? And they say, oh, but it's unidentifiable. Well, if you follow tech news around the world every day, you realize that there are tables of information that are available where you can cross-reference the anonymized data to the individuals. So the anonymized data might be the device ID, and all it is some number around the device, or some advertisement, cookie ID. And there are these incredible, it's like a phone directory. You just go out, and these phone directories basically have everybody's device is cross-referenceable to their actual identity. And so you get this anonymized data. Well, it's not anonymized for long. You just take it over to one of these lookup tables, plug in the number, boom, and then it will tell you who the individual is. So it's claiming that you only have anonymized data doesn't really work anymore. And so the article today is, a priest was outed by his iPhone's data location. Anyone could be next. The latest scandal to rock the Catholic Church was both incredibly unnerving and entirely preventable. Why isn't anyone doing anything about it? This week but let's get into this. This article about the Grindr and their data. Is that the one? It was the one I was reading. Yeah, it was.
Tyler, can I quickly build on the priest one, just in a synthetic data context?
Yeah.
So like synthetic data, like simplistically, is obviously does what it says in the tin. It's artificial, created by the machine. So this is really important. And actually, when you were talking about Salesforce and where they're going to get their growth, I predict it's going to be in this data space, Tyler, rather than the acquisition of like other like feature sets type stuff. So the so what for this is synthetic data can be built by one of two ways. Either you can, say, Tyler, I've got 50 data points on you. I obfuscate like the top 10 ones, and then I use some of the other ones, and then I cook up some data to create the new 50, and then I've got a copycat in my synthetic data database. So, but the kind of market is looking at this and going, well, is this a bit dodgy? Because people could get to Tyler through some of the obfuscated stuff. So I just think it's more of a technical point, Tyler, but I do predict this synthetic data thing to go gangbusters in the next sort of 12 months, especially for the startups who don't have access to what the FANGs have got, i.e. the big data sets. They're going to look to synthetic data to cook up their products. That was it.
I agree with Dave, because also one of the acquisitions that doesn't get enough attention is Tableau. And some of the developer tools like Heroku and middleware, they're really going on the data side, AI side of things. And I think that's a move for not just enterprise tools, because Salesforce wants to go middle market and low market too. So I agree with Dave on that point.
So, yeah, it's just people need to be aware that I think the general public is starting to become aware of, due to Pegasus and stories like this. Everyone's going to get the correct idea that there's no hiding of anything. If you're online in any kind of way, if you have a device that's connected to the internet, anything you do on that device could, as Charles said here yesterday on stage, and as my most geeky friends take the same perspective, that they assume that everything they say and do on a device will be on the front page of the New York Times, and that's just sort of the hygiene that you sort of have to live with in 2021, and at least for the time being. And the next story kind of highlights this as well. The next story is Spanish police have arrested Joseph O'Connor, a UK citizen. At the request of the US, Uncle Sam told the Spanish police to arrest UK citizen Joseph O'Connor over his alleged involvement in last year's hack of high-profile Twitter accounts. And you might recall that even Elon Musk's and Bill Gates' Twitter accounts got hacked briefly, and it forced Twitter to shut down all verified accounts momentarily, because they were worried that, like, holy shit, if they got Bill Gates and Elon Musk, they must have all of the verified accounts. And so there was a bit of a panic, and they shut down all verified accounts from tweeting temporarily. And then they clearly think they know who the person is now. Apparently 20 years old or whatever. What does it say here? UK man arrested over 2020 tweet celebrity hacks. He allegedly compromised TikTok and Snapchat accounts too. Authorities are still cracking down on participants in the July 2020 Twitter celebrity attacks. Spanish police have arrested UK citizen Joseph O'Connor at the US request over his alleged involvement in compromising over 130 Twitter accounts. Officials didn't detail how he contributed to the campaign, but O'Connor has also been charged with hijacking TikTok and Snapchat accounts, as well as cyber stalking a juvenile victim. O'Connor faces a total of 10 charges, including 6 related to unauthorized computer access, 2 for cyber stalking, and 1 each for extortion and threats. The Twitter hacks compromised accounts for a wide range of companies and personalities, including Apple, Uber, Elon Musk, and eventual U.S. President Joe Biden. The attackers apparently used social engineering to gain access to the internal Twitter tools and promote a Bitcoin scam. It didn't take long for police to arrest the claimed mastermind, teen hacker Graham Ivan Clark, who later pled guilty to 30 charges. O'Connor's arrest won't topple the criminal organization as a result. However, it's evident that the U.S. authorities want to send a message to would-be social media hackers. Those perpetrators are risking serious charges, even if they're not primarily responsible for the attacks.
Joseph's going to have to head into that confession box, Tyler.
Yeah,
Ask me, Father,
a little time in the Amazon box. Little finger painting for our friend Joseph. California Department of Employment and Housing has sued Activision Blizzard for sexual harassment of and discrimination against its female staff. Say what? Say, huh? What is this about? It says video game giant Activision Blizzard, which makes tremendously huge titles, maker of games including World of Warcraft and Diablo, fosters a frat boy culture in which female employees are subject to constant sexual harassment, unequal pay, and retaliation, according to a lawsuit filed by the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing. A 2-year investigation by the state agency found that the company discriminated against female employees in terms of conditions of employment, including compensation, assignment, promotion, and termination. Company leadership consistently failed to take steps to prevent discrimination, harassment, and retaliation, the agency said. According to the complaint filed Tuesday in the LA Superior Court, female employees make up around 20% of the Activision workforce and subjected to a pervasive frat boy workplace culture, including cube crawls in which male employees drink copious amounts of alcohol as they crawl their way through various cubicles in the office and often engage in inappropriate behavior towards female employees. The agency alleges male employees play video games during the workday while delegating responsibility to female employees, engage in sexual banter, and joke openly about rape, among other things. Female employees allege being held back from promotions because of the possibility they might become pregnant, being criticized for leaving to pick up their children up from daycare, and being kicked out of lactation rooms so male colleagues could use the rooms for meetings, and on and on and on. So I'm retweeting this one out to the Tech News Twitter account at TNATW, where we tweet all of the stories. And that was...
Tyler, that's a great advert for the other club, you know, the New York Tech Girls roasting tech bros. Have you heard of that one?
Yeah. And then that was like number 5. Number 6 is facial recognition company Clearview AI raises $30 million Series B amid legal and ethical concerns, with new investors requesting they not be publicly identified. And this is from Kashmir Hill from the New York Times, which is Charles, who's in the audience, by the way, hanging it out low in San Diego, chilling.
Isn't that kind of hilarious, though, that the company that makes its money identifying people has investors that don't want to be identified?
It's a little ironic. But but it's incredibly valuable. And the investors, what does it say here? Clearview AI is currently the largest of the target of multiple class action lawsuits and joint investigation by Britain and Australia that hasn't kept investors away. The New York-based startup, which scraped billions of photos from public profiles. It's a paywalled article on New York Times, but it talks about Peter Thiel, and it's wildly used, like ubiquitously, and it's incredibly powerful, incredibly helpful in catching in thousands of bad guys on a regular basis. And you would be hard to find an app that is more useful to its users. In the case of police departments, like, it's not easy to make an app that is so incredibly powerful and used and loved by its users. So, of course, there's similar to the article, the debate we were having about the pluses and minuses of AI, of facial recognition. I think Clearview should do more in the positive PR department to make it known that they were in kind of directly responsible for the arrests of, every time that, bad guys get caught, or especially if it's, sexual predators or whatnot, if they could somehow take credit for it, because then it might shift public opinion about this particular company and how it's being used. And if somebody uses it for a bad case, then sure, a journalist will hear about it, because there's lots of journalists who want to spread negative info about this company. So if somebody has negative info to share, a journalist will run it, as they have done. I mean, that's what BuzzFeed was doing. But the only thing BuzzFeed was really able to run is, here's their client list, and here's all the U.S. agencies and police agencies that use it. That's not really much of a condemnation of the app. That means it's very much used by a lot of government agencies who find it very useful. So if there's really...
Yeah, and the quietness, Tyler, around the other big companies, like the SenseTime one versus like the kind of torrent of like criticism against this one,
right?
It just it begs the question, why?
Well, no, here's the point is, Pegasus is a technology, right? It's a phone, it's a spyware in a phone, and it was being used in bad ways that we now have learned in the past 48 hours, where Modi was using it, India was using it against Modi's political opponents. That's bad. That's terrible. And one of the headlines today is that there's now protests in Delhi, to get Modi to resign, and to, they're claiming it was treason. And there was incredibly bad use cases of Pegasus that are now public, that we now know about. Okay, so facial recognition could also be used as one of the easy ways to summarize it is, there's positives and negatives that come out of every technology. Facial recognition has lots of positives and lots of negatives. The positives are very difficult to do crimes when there's facial recognition on cameras everywhere. So crime comes to a notable decrease, especially really egregious crimes. People are going to get caught. So it makes policing far more easier. You could probably have a lot less police on the streets if you just replace them with cameras that have facial recognition everywhere. You don't really need police around. You don't really need to beat up people either. You don't need to chase them in cars either. Anyone doing anything nefarious is going to be caught, right? So there's a whole lot of benefits in that. The negatives, of course, as we said, are if you're living in a place like Sweden or Norway, where the government, is pretty much, working on behalf of the citizens, it's pretty much all upside, very little potential downside. If you live in an authoritarian regime, however, that is, notoriously does bad things against its own citizens, then of course you have a lot to worry about. However, Clearview is being used by the U.S., some other countries as well. However, China has their own version of Clearview called SenseTime. China's not going to use Clearview. Clearview is not worried about the same instance that Pegasus had, where it's being used by countries that are now, using it in bad ways. The countries that want to use facial recognition in bad ways, Clearview just has to be very clear about, no, we're not going to sell it to authoritarian regimes. Russia has their own called PimEyes. China has their own called SenseTime. Israel has their own called AnyVision. Go use one of those, and they can. And Russia will be very happy to sell you PimEyes. In fact, anyone can use PimEyes. It's publicly available. You go to PimEyes.com. $30 a month. You can start using it right now. Clearview, you can't do that. There's a lot of friction to being able to become a Clearview AI user. So I don't think Clearview as a company has much to worry about in the negative PR department. I think they have tremendous upside potential if they start doing a deal with the agencies who use it to say, hey, if you use our technology and you're able to do something, we want to be able to do a press release saying this criminal caught, and they could make a Twitter feed of 100 people a day that are being caught as a result of Clearview. And then people realize, shit, we've had a year of 100 bad guys getting caught a day. Has there been a negative thing out of Clearview? Yes, there will be negative things out of facial recognition, no doubt. But will they necessarily be a result of Clearview? I don't know. I think Clearview could do the analysis and become much more embracing of the positive outcomes. I don't know, just a theory. But Clearview just raised $30 million from investors despite legal troubles, is the headline from the New York Times. Series B, the lawsuits aren't the only thing Clearview should be worried about, according to one person on Twitter. If we pass the Fourth Amendment, is not for sale act, it will ban law enforcement from paying for Clearview or its data. Hopefully, Senator Durbin will hold a markup for this important bill soon. Lot of people talking on Twitter about this particular deal. So anyway, next big story. Facebook hides. Oh, no, there was one right here from Canada. Ottawa tested facial recognition on millions of travelers at Toronto's airport in 2016. In an effort to identify potential deportees, the federal government quietly tested facial recognition technology on millions of unsuspected travelers in Toronto's airport. The 6-month initiative meant to pick out people the Canada Border Services Agency suspected might try to enter the country using fake identification is detailed in a document obtained by the Globe and Mail through a Freedom of Information request. The project is the largest known government deployment of the technology in Canada. As travelers walk through the international arrivals border control area at Terminal 3, 31 cameras captured images of their faces. Whether the system returned a match against a 5,000-person list of previously deported people, a border officer would review the data and pass the traveler information along to an officer on the terminal floor who would track the traveler down and put them into a secondary inspection. Okay, and to which I ask, wouldn't you want immigration desks, if they have a bad guy list of people that they've banned from the country, wouldn't you want them to have the ability to be notified that the people on that banned list that are trying to re-enter the country, this is the Globe and Mail claiming to have a smoking gun against the technology, but when you look into how it's being used, and they claim to have, the goods, they looked at the documents, and the documents show there's a list of 5,000 people that are banned from Canada, and the immigration desk was using facial recognition to make sure they got notified if any of these 5,000 people tried to re-enter the country. To which I say, great idea. Why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah, exactly. Why would you not have it is the question, Tyler. Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Fantastic.
Because I want to have an affair and go to Target and not get identified.
Right, but the police. I'm
being facetious, but
yeah,
I
understand.
That's the privacy reason, right?
Yeah, I got you. But in this case, this is a case of a journalist finding information about how it's being used by an agency, and this is the process. This is what will happen if somebody uses the technology in a bad way. It will get to a journalist who will make a story about it, because these journalists are thirsty to write negative articles about this technology. If you submit something to help desk or tip desk at any journalist, and the subject line of your message says facial recognition, you're going to get opened immediately. And
the golden age of facial recognition is over. They want to write that.
Yeah, well, no, they want to find negative articles about this technology of facial recognition. They are thirsty on the lookout. They are hungry hippos to write an article about the negative use cases of facial recognition in the US or in Canada. And then they wrote one, and then you read, based on the data that they had access to in the Right of Information Act, that, well, it turns out in Terminal 3, they had a blacklist of 5,000 people who were banned from Canada, and the immigration desk was using the technology to get notified if one of these 5,000 people tried to re-enter Canada. And I'm supposed to be worried that they're using it that way? You're trying to scare me off of facial recognition? That sounds fucking awesome. But if you can find an article of a misuse of facial recognition in my country, please tell me about it. I'm right here. I'm all ears. Let me hear it. But if you keep sending me articles and the only use cases you send me are fucking brilliant use cases of it, I'm going to say, what are you ranting about? This is fantastic. By the way, where's your article of the 1,000 bad guys that got caught last week? Let's have an actual discussion of the data, of the merits of this technology and how it's being used. Yes, of course, it will be used bad in some places, especially in countries with authoritarian regimes who are probably not using the app you're trying to hit. You're trying to hit the company. The technology and the company are two different things. There are multiple companies that are built on top of that technology. There's lots of email programs, some good, some bad. There's lots of social media networks, some good, some bad. There's lots of facial recognition companies, some good, some bad. And the journalists clearly have it out for Clearview AI, but as of yet, they don't really have a case against it. Nor are they sharing the abundant number of likely tens of thousands of people who are sitting in jail rightfully due to the technology. Never once have they written that article. So let's have the debate. Is this good or not? Of course, as I said, it will be used badly by bad actors. And the question is,
that's the problem, Tyler. We just don't have the arguments against. We've got like we can't really do the debate because that we don't have the material against it. We just got some. Yeah,
it's a hit piece, right?
That's my point. Is they're trying to write hit pieces, and when you read that, they even phrase them as, they write the title in a way to imply that there was something nefarious going on, and then you read the article and you're like,
and it's like, no,
I want people banned from my country to not enter my country, and if there's a tool that helps the immigration desk figure that out.
Welcome, Charles. Charles just joined.
Yeah, good timing.
He's got no opinion on this issue, I'm sure.
What are we talking about?
We don't know.
So for those who don't know, Charles is the co-founder of this company we're talking about called Clearview AI that just raised $50 million from unidentified investors who will likely be identified due to their own technology in days to come. So the issue is, why doesn't Clearview do more to highlight the positive outcomes of its technology?
Very simply, I don't run the company. If I ran it, that's how it would be done.
Yeah.
But I don't run it. So that's how it is.
Okay.
I mean, look.
Seems like a huge missed marketing opportunity.
Oh, yes. Definitely agreed. But, the other two co-founders of the company, I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens with Clearview over the next 6 months. Wink. Yeah, I mean, look, the basic problem in general is that there are a number of people who do not like Clearview, and many of them are connected to various governments. Many of them have competitor products, and I think it's been a whirlwind with Clearview. Of course, the New York Times has its own slant that it puts on things, and there have been stories that have come out about Clearview that have been favorable. I mean, there have been many cases of solving this crime or that child rape or what have you. But, I think, how to put this, I think the management team running Clearview is, I would run it differently. Let me be diplomatic.
Sure.
Let me be.
To touch on the good PR, Charles, if you just think of what came out with Othram, that article a few days ago about finding grace. I mean, it's such a fantastic celebration of the technology and all of the good sides of it. Like,
oh yeah,
you need more of that, right?
You compare Othram to Clearview, and it's night and day. I mean, Othram today, OTHRAM for those who are interested. This is the tweet. Truly honored to be able to assist the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department in identifying the suspect to the sexual assault and murder of Stephanie Isaacson. This idea was made with, basically a record low quantity of DNA. And, I think when people see the faces of the victims and, when we catch the people who murdered them, in the case of Othram, it's a very different kind of thing. And that's another company I'm affiliated with in this sort of law enforcement, space. So, yeah, I mean, look, it's an interesting question. I mean, I think that the facial recognition creeps people out. I definitely subscribe to some of that myself. I mean, I am a bit creeped out by it. It's very effective. But we live in a world in which, AnyVision just raised $235 million. and they're the Israeli equivalent of Clearview. Not as good, of course. And then SenseTime, which is the Chinese version, which is banned in the US. And then the Russian version, which is, PimEyes. So yeah, I mean, do I wish it were run differently? Yes, I do. And maybe one day I'll be able to run it. We shall see.
Okay, so it's such an interesting.
Sorry for belly aching.
I'm on, right? Okay, so it has so much potential for positive and of course for negative, and the question is, how can we set it up to take advantage of the tremendous positive potential of it and minimize the negative potential for it? You have thoughts on that, Charles?
Yeah, I mean, look, I am how to put this? I'm of the view that basically you have a right to know who's at your doorstep. And just like you have caller ID, I think facial recognition should be allowed for people who are normal, everyday citizens. It can obviously be abused, as Google can be abused, as all kind of technologies can be abused. And so I believe in basically democratizing access to it.
Are they going out of their way to prohibit it getting in the hand? Because a lot of it is how it's used, right? It's like the old hammer. It's like guns and hammers and all that kind of thing. It's a tool, and if it gets in the wrong hands, it can be bad. So because of that, the nature of that, because it's a very powerful tool, are they taking any steps to make sure it doesn't get in the hands of,
Right. It's a law enforcement only app right now. And I believe that, in the U.S., and I know not everybody here is from the U.S., but in the U.S., 20 million Americans, have concealed carry licenses. And you go through a background check when you get a concealed carry license. The FBI does the checks. And I don't see why you're allowed to own a gun, which can potentially shoot and kill people, but you're not allowed to own facial recognition because reasons. Nobody ever really explains that, and I'd be curious, why people believe that. But basically, all facial recognition does is it basically automates a process that already occurs in the brain, which is recognizing, what's going on. When you run a facial recognition algorithm, it's not very complicated. Like it goes through a database. It looks up, basically, it matches with that database. Now, of course, there's a lot of work that went into building Clearview, and I don't want to understate that. But I think if people had the technology and used the technology, they would see that, yes, it's very powerful, but like the world will still continue to turn, and life will continue to be good. But yes, I do think I would favor it to more people.
What about using it in advertising? Like people walking into, we saw headlines recently that it's being used in lots of big retailers already, not Clearview, but some other.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just philosophically opposed to ads. I would run, I believe in subscription models just generally. I don't like basically how advertisements, essentially steal our free will from us. And I think ads are quite a nuisance to the internet generally. But yes, I mean, one could imagine a situation where, like in Minority Report, you walk into a store, it looks you up, and it says, hey, we have a sale on, whatever underwear you want to purchase that day. I don't really have any objections to that, but
so here's an article.
People are.
Let me read this.
People don't like that.
Facial recognition surges in retail stores is the headline. It says facial recognition tech is coming to a store near you if it's not there already, and that's sparking a new wave of opposition. Why it matters. This is from Axios, by the way. The systems can scan or store facial images of both shoppers and workers. Their use accelerated during the pandemic as retailers look for ways to prevent fraud, track foot traffic with fewer employees, and offer contactless payments at a time when consumers were wary of interacting with others. Which is an interesting point. You can pay with your face, essentially, which is, I believe, Amazon is even experimenting with that in their Amazon grocery stores, where you just walk out with the goods because they already know who you are based on the app in your pocket and your face and whatnot. Driving the news, more than 3 dozen advocacy groups launched a campaign last week to pressure retailers to stop using facial recognition technologies or to plead them not to use. Facial recognition vendors are taking advantage of the pandemic to promote the technology to offer hands-free payments or monitor the distance between people and stores are promoting them as a feature for safety and convenience. Again, how is that bad? That you're
I mean,
I
they
also
should
think that
build it into the child trafficking database and stuff like that, and then you could really have a positive
Yep.
use case.
No, I mean, look, Clearview has caught, thousands of pedophiles. I mean, it's caught a bunch of the rioters on January 6th, which is, arguably some of those people are trying to overthrow the U.S. government.
So but even in this article, the scenario, the dystopian scenario they're trying to paint is that it's enabling people to pay for things without with their face, and it's enabling stores to increase safety by making sure people are standing far enough apart. What?
Oh yeah,
That's
also,
your criticism of it?
yeah, but
Look, the
also I
issue
just
is that
wanted to
there's
say
an
one
activist
Charles.
population that doesn't like it, and that's just Anyway, sorry, I interrupted
So it
whoever
says
was
where it
speaking. Go
stands.
ahead.
Stores including Walmart, Kroger, Home Depot, and Target have said they won't use facial recognition technologies per the advocacy group's running list of retailers. But Albertsons, Macy's, and Apple stores are among many retailers that do use the technology per the group's list. Their privacy policies say that they use it for security and to prevent fraud. Apple was sued by a black New York man who was misidentified as a shoplifter by the facial recognition security system. Finally, there's a use case. There's something we could talk about.
Right, and that particular case, by the way, was done by NEC, which is a Japanese company, and why it is that American law enforcement is using facial recognition that belongs to other countries that doesn't work as well when it's trained on Japanese faces as opposed to American faces or multiracial faces. I don't know, but it's something I'd like to figure out.
Yeah. So it says facial recognition tools are primarily used by retailers for security reasons, chiefly to prevent shoplifting. And they usually don't link images to personally identifiable information, says Brenda Long, Senior Counsel and Director of Artificial Intelligence and Ethics at the Future of Privacy Foundation. There are plenty of other ways stores would like to use the technology, she said, such as identifying loyalty club members the minute they enter the store to send them push alerts and text messages about deals or products they're likely to be interested in, knowing exactly how long a customer is in the store to help tailor their experience in future visits, using biometric systems for employees to clock in and clock out and track workers' whereabouts and monitor productivity. Advocates find this use particularly concerning because employees do not have the choice to opt out. That's the worst case scenario. Is they're worried that we're going to have a better understanding of how employees are,
Tyler, managers today use facial recognition, right? So an employee's just walked in, you've seen them, you've recognized their face, they've attended work, right? So that perspective doesn't make sense.
What's really going on,
yeah.
if people want to know, what's really going on, I'll just tell you, which is, Google and Facebook and others are concerned about losing their network effects on the database that they've already accumulated. So if you look at, that's what's really
Let me play the breaking news for you. Charles, you just dropped the bomb. That's huge. You can build a better ad network based on faces than on cookies. Faces are far better than, in some cases, than cookies. It's basically cookies for the physical world, is what it is.
Look, we all have separate DNA, right? And we all have separate faces. And what's coming is the genetics revolution, where literally your entire essence is in your DNA. And the other side of it is your face. Your face protects your brain. Your brain is, basically what powers you, keeps you alive. And your face conveys all this emotion, which, tells people about what you're feeling, all that sort of thing. And of course, that's very valuable. Knowing who you are, where you're coming and going, all that's very valuable to nation states, to advertisers, to a whole bunch of folks. Now, what Facebook is afraid of, and I know this because one of our investors is connected with Facebook, and I've had many friends over the years at Facebook, but what Facebook is afraid of and why they don't do a subscription service is they're worried that people will glom on to the fact that a lot of the advertising that goes on Facebook is fraudulent. And so what they want to do is, rather than have you pay for endless WhatsApp, right, or endless Facebook or endless Instagram without ads, they want to basically continue to cheat the advertisers. And so what's happening is that they fund a lot of these, like basically these anti-facial recognition activist organizations to essentially enshrine their monopoly. So what Clearview did was, we read all of these court cases, and there's a case called HiQ v. LinkedIn, and HiQ v. LinkedIn is a court battle in which HiQ, which was backed by the Electronic Frontier Foundation, EFF, they got in trouble for scraping LinkedIn to build their own database. And so what happened was EFF defended them, and it went, I think, all the way up to the Eighth Circuit. It may actually go ultimately before the Supreme Court, but Facebook and Google were funding that lawsuit through the EFF because they wanted to put the hurt on LinkedIn. That's that's the backdrop on it. So what did Clearview do? Well, Clearview took all of the rest of the internet and scraped all of it, including things that had already scraped Facebook and Google. And now they're mad about that. And that's sort of like the backdrop of like all of the fights that are going on. Now, that's on the domestic side. On the international side, there are all these different countries that don't want, America and her allies to basically have facial recognition. And of course, there are people who are worried about racial discrimination and all of that comes with facial recognition. But of course, the argument there is not to not invest in facial recognition. It's just better facial recognition that requires larger databases of a more, racially and ethnically diverse population.
So it's a super interesting point, there's very big tech companies that this is a bit of a threat to their business, and that's all you need to know. You don't want to get all
this is why all those companies are getting into this, the identification part of the game too, right?
But Charles, can you comment on Google clearly is dabbling in DNA?
Google, Amazon, there are a number of other players here. On the DNA
I think DNA is key.
Yeah, on the DNA front, I don't think that Google will ultimately be successful. I think Amazon's going to win, and I imagine a future in the not too distant future in which all of your healthcare is provided to you by Amazon, and one of the first things they do is they genetically sequence you.
Well, that would be my guess. I think sequencing maybe non-identifiable parts of you would also become part of a cryptographic key of the future.
For sure. I mean, I will just tell you, back when I had Clearview on my phone, I used Clearview like a search engine. And so, people would come up to me, I'd Clearview them. One of the cool features of Clearview is, everybody's face is here on Clubhouse, right? I could actually click on your photo and actually pull up all of the photos of you elsewhere on the internet, which was super fun to basically go and pursue all of that. You jump from link to link on Wikipedia. You can do that through facial recognition through Clearview's products. But I think the management at Clearview is a bit more timid than I would be. There were 3 co-founders. I lost. You know what I mean? I lost the argument. And, so I and my ex-wife and daughter are together are the 3rd largest shareholders of Clearview. And unfortunately, I lost that debate for now. And as the rest of my holdings get larger, and as Clearview kind of, doesn't grow as fast as AnyVision or SenseTime, there might be opportunities to kind of go in and change some of those policies.
Okay. So, thank you for all that, Charles. The DNA thing going forward is going to be wild to watch. For those who don't know, we watch medtech is particularly fascinating, particularly to Google and Amazon have really interesting ambitions in that area. And it's because that data can be used in ways that would blow your freaking mind.
I will say for those who are interested, I have the company I'm the CEO of is called Traitwell, and we actually take people's DNA and tell people controversial things about themselves that 23andMe and Ancestry don't want you to know. And that we did a thing called COVID Forecaster, where people could take their 23andMe and Ancestry results and, using the latest in genetics, give them a probabilistic estimate of contracting really bad COVID so bad they'd go to the hospital. And we built up a little database of that. And so there'll be other things that I'll be rolling out soon on that in the future. But yes, in the future, basically all these traits about yourself, you'll get sequenced. Everybody, will tell you all these things from your genome-wide associated studies about where you match up on various dimensions. And then you'll go to your doctors like your Heymans and your, and other folks, and you'll get a second opinion, but that'll be like a big start of your conversation. Like, so for instance, like I have 3.5 times the likelihood of the US population's the likelihood of having a stroke. And, it's unfortunate, but like it is what it is. And so that genetic, that influences a lot of other decisions I make about my health. And so, I act accordingly.
Did you mention the retina scanning, Tyler, about the heart disease?
We did cover that briefly yesterday. Yeah,
but I mean, today I thought it was kind of relevant.
Oh, totally.
What he's talking
yeah.
about.
Well, here's another thing, just for on this relevant topic, as we talk about, Google and these ad networks are particularly interested in data and particularly interested in biometric data. They have your data of what you do on the internet. They would love lots of more data, because the more data they have about you, the better they can target ads to you. And that's the fundamentals of their business, essentially. And so that's why they're getting into medtech, because they're going to get a lot of biometric data about you, even by putting a ring on you that tells, your heartbeat they can coordinate the time of your heartbeat when you were watching a particular ad, for example. But it gets far worse, because if they can get your iris through your camera on your devices, which are constantly improving, the cameras on your devices are now getting so good that they can now get new data from you, from your face, and from your iris. And from your iris alone, they can get your gender from your eye. They know inside of the looking of your eye and your age and your physical health, if you've had concussions, chronic pain, vision disorders, obesity, or Parkinson's disease, if you have mental health issues like depression, PTSD, autism, or eating disorders, if you have drug consumption like alcohol, tobacco, cocaine, MDMA, or cannabis, yet just to name a few. And we can now add a new one to that list. There was a headline yesterday that they can now detect heart disease from your iris. So you can now understand that the camera on your phone, the selfie cam, and on your laptop and in your VR headset, which will have a camera looking right into your eye, this is the juiciest of data if they could get all of these things about you. So, but by the way, your DNA will tell far more than that. So if they start doing DNA related stuff, and they are, this builds entrenches their ability to use that data in ways that, as data ad network, as masters of using data, it's that's what I think consumers might want to be a little bit worried about. Not that the police are using facial recognition, or the immigration desk at Canada's airport is using it to catch people on their ban list, or that Apple's using it in their stores to prevent fraud.
Tyler.
Yes.
In terms of sorry, it's Heyman. It's in terms of the medical stuff, right? Even the eyes. This has been known for ages. We learned this in medical school, right? Arcosynolus is basically, you could take a picture of a person, right? Any picture on Google right now, or any Facebook picture, and I could tell you who has some sort of a medical condition by just looking at their face and their eyes. So all the stuff, even Philips, a couple of years ago, actually a decade ago, they did this type of research where they actually looked at a person's face and they could gauge not only blood pressure and heart rate. Not blood pressure at that time, but it was heart rate. So all the stuff is there, right? It's just that they're just digitizing it right now, which is great.
If you speak at all, you now, just in a few words, humans can detect some things from speech, but algorithms are now being able to detect Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, depression,
even COVID symptoms, early COVID symptoms.
There's a COVID cough predictor now that it can tell from the cough if it's a COVID cough. And so this biometric data is the juiciest of data, and now you know why the big tech companies are getting into medtech. Yes, of course, they want to make you healthier. Sure, it's about you. They want to make sure you live longer. Of course, absolutely. It has nothing to do about entrenching and solidifying their already existing $1 trillion businesses and taking them from 1 trillion to 5 trillion. It's got nothing to do with that. Not at all. It's got nothing about making $4 trillion over the next 3 years. Not at all. It's about making sure you live another 2 years longer. That's their real focus, right? So all these articles about Toronto airport use facial recognition to stop bad guys from entering the country. Oh, stop the presses. Holy cow. What are you ranting about? And by the way, Charles dropped a bomb, which is, he said, okay, you really want to know what's going on? I'm going to tell you what's really going on. Those big tech companies, and he named Google and Facebook and others, Amazon, don't like facial recognition getting into the hands of other tech companies, smaller tech companies, other sources, because it plays against. It's not a benefit to them that they don't control that, right? So they want to make a big PR stink about, let's ban all facial recognition everywhere, because they're not going to get into that game. They're getting into the DNA recognition. And anyway, it's wild. It's a crazy game. I think he's probably right, though. I think there's clearly a really strong push, and they're creating lists of companies that are using facial recognition and trying to cancel them. And then here's the companies who have refused to use facial recognition and trying to make a kind of these are the good guys versus the bad guys. And they're trying to paint bad guys out of people like Apple, who are using facial recognition in their own stores. And I don't know. I don't think consumers are going to fall for that at the end of the day. So anyway.
Pay attention to who doesn't get mentioned.
By the way, in terms of the stores, this has been going on. I'm sure Cal knows about it, all this in detail, but the watching people as they purchase products, that has been going on for ages. Nielsen used to do it. And even they used to even look at the color of the product that you chose on a shelf. So that would actually create where to place a product on the shelf. I didn't know that this kind of stuff was going on way before we were even thinking. Sony actually did that, apparently, with certain cameras and stuff.
Yeah. So next big article, let's do this. So the next big article is Facebook now hiding the hashtag vaccines kill from searches, displaying a message that says it is keeping our community safe 2 years after Instagram hid the tag, which is the same parent company, by the way. So it's interesting that Facebook hasn't done that when Instagram did it 2 years ago. Last week, even as it came under fire from the White House over its role in spreading anti-vaccine information, people were able to search for and tag their posts vaccines kill, which was making it easy for the anti-vaxxers to find and share stories about their narrative that vaccines are killing people. And so now when they ban that hashtag, it's more difficult for people who want to find, information to support their view. So anyway, what the Washington Post says, Biden could reset the debate over Facebook and vaccine misinformation by focusing less on specific content moderation decisions and more on platforms' algorithms. True. And Facebook just blocked the vaccine kill hashtag 2 years too late, is from Gizmodo. And here's the code words anti-vaxxers are using to evade Facebook ban. So they're creating new words to avoid the words that have been banned by Facebook, like this hashtag vaccines kill. They just make a new word. So they start changing the V to some other character on the keyboard that looks like a V or whatever. So next big story is that Senator Chairman Gary Gensler says that stock tokens and stablecoins backed by securities are implicated by the securities law and must work with our securities regime. Stock tokens and stablecoins. So the SEC wants to get more of a bear hug on stock tokens and stablecoins. And next story is that Bill.com to acquire Invoice2Go, whose accounts receivable software helps businesses, freelancers, and whatever. And they bought it for $625 million in cash and stock. Google rolls out Backup by Google One, a unified Android cloud backup that syncs app data, messages, photos, and more. Backup replaces the Play Services tool. And the next big one is, and this one's really interesting, Epic Games acquires Sketchfab, which operates a repository of more than 4 million 3D assets for an undisclosed sum. Sketchfab reduces its store commissions from 30% to 12%. The New York-based startup Sketchfab has been acquired by Epic Games for an undisclosed amount. The company behind Fortnite and Unreal Engine, which is Epic Games, was the acquirer of Sketchfab. And I think this is actually potentially fantastic. because, as it says, it's a repository of 4 million and very quickly growing. It's a rather new company of 3D assets. And what they mean is you can previously, you could create a 3D asset, a 3D object on your computer with software. And it would take you all day to make, a little rubber yellow ducky, like a bathtub ducky. If you want to make a 3D version of a yellow rubber bathtub ducky, you could spend a day or 2 or 3 or 4 on a computer to make that. Or you can use your iPhone and turn on the LiDAR camera and just move the camera around the rubber ducky, and you're done in about 10 seconds. And then import that into Sketchfab. And Apple realizes the power of that, and they're continuing to improve that on each upcoming device. It works in the existing iPhones. It will get better in the next iPhones, because this is fundamental to Apple's future, as you will soon understand. Because they want to be able to digitize in 3D every object on the planet and every city on the planet, and make a digital twin of the planet, so that you could go into this VR environment and you're essentially could walk down any street, and it's an exact digital. They have cars driving down streets with these LiDAR cameras scanning every building to make 3D models so that you can walk down that street in VR. Every city on the planet, every building on the planet, the inside of every building on the planet, and every object inside of every building on the planet. So we would have an actual 3D digital duplicate of reality in virtual reality.
And it won't take a fleet of cars, because the people will just be walking around getting the data like crazy, right?
Well, the Apple car will likely, include these cameras.
Well,
on
what I mean is I'm sure they're going to try to build this into some iteration of the Apple glasses, right? So
right. I see what you mean.
You'd want to have
So
you'd want to have a volumetric analysis of a person, so that when you go to put on the Gucci, when he buys the Gucci outfit, that he only shows to people wearing Apple glasses. Apple's going to want their finished product to be just a little bit better than everyone else. So Chris talks about it it's a 2D image when you take a picture, but LiDAR brings things into 3D. When you wear that hat or whatever, it's going to look literally like you're wearing a perfect hat, and not some stupid Photoshop job.
But also there's a whole bunch of companies all right now getting ready to launch their AR glasses, including Google, Apple, Facebook, Snapchat, TikTok, all of them, and Luxottica, the maker of all of the sunglasses, in a partnership with
Tyler.
Yes.
You can PTR Clubhouse, Jeff. I'm now a rubber duck from Tech News with my laptop. They scan me, but also we've used digital twins in manufacturing for a long time, and it's just amazing what you can do with it for real life.
Yeah.
And it works great. And with the scanning, it's just going to speed it up.
Right. But imagine this future, which the point of Epic Games buying Sketchfab is as follows, is that Epic Games is sort of like what Adobe is for photos with Photoshop. And and in Photoshop, you can bring in lots of little clip art, right? They have clip art libraries of millions of photos of icons of all different kinds. And you can bring in the clip art into Photoshop and enhance your photos with clip art. Okay, that's 2-dimensional images. Epic Games is building 3-dimensional worlds like video games. And in these 3-dimensional worlds, you now have a library Sketchfab has a repository of 4 million 3D assets that you can drag and drop into your video game environment or VR or AR environment. So if you're creating a VR experience or AR experience, and you build a running app so that when somebody's running anywhere they go, every quarter mile or every 100 meters, there's a big red classic alarm clock, 10 feet high, 3 meters high, that has the time of how fast they're running on it as they run. They virtually see it and if you want to see what I'm talking about, I will tweet it out right now. And thanks to Evan, who was joining us on stage. He's still on. Evan Carlson's on stage, and I'm wondering if that's the Evan who I used to work with, by the way. Let's see.
I wanted to add just a brief bit of context to the Sketchfab thing, if that's okay, or you want to move on? Or
yeah, I'm going to tweet. Hey, Chris, welcome back. I just want to tweet out here. check out this tweet I just sent to Tech News Around the World at TNATW. It shows a person wearing VR glasses running down the beach, and you're looking from their perspective. And as they're running down the beach, they see these huge alarm clocks sitting on the sand that are bigger than they are. And it shows the time of the run, how long they've been running and how fast they're running. And it's this augmented reality. You have these augmented virtual
Dancing
objects.
shark.
Yeah. And here I'm tweeting out other AR experiences. I guess Evan works at...
Does anyone think that Epic buying it's going to end up biting Apple in the butt at some point?
Well, no, I think it's a really smart move from Epic. The only problem is I hope they don't limit the ability of everyone else to keep using Sketchfab as this kind of open repository for their VR experiences, even if they're building their experience outside of Epic's platform.
So
go ahead, Chris.
Just very briefly on Sketchfab with things. So, this is you hit the nail on the head with the long-term strategy. Like, you've got exactly where Epic Games is like aiming and why they're interested in these technologies. One of the more colors I wanted to add with Sketchfab specifically is 4 million might sound like a lot as a huge content repository, and don't get me wrong, you can do a lot with that. But there are larger repositories that exist out there. Especially when we start having these like digital acquisition things and these these massive data sets where they basically will just do 3D scans of entire environments. Those basically fit much closer to Unreal's current strategy of how they're doing content acquisition. The thing that Sketchfab has that's really unique is essentially they have worked an enormous amount on the back end for being able to take arbitrary file formats from almost any source imaginable and converting them to something that can be very quickly accessible and usable on the web, and do so in a way that basically essentially can be plugged into almost anything else. That sort of center point connection is something that Epic has actually struggled a little bit with, where essentially on 2 points. One, essentially, they've had to have external plugins give that sort of centerpiece flexibility for importers and exporters with things, and their asset importing skills have gotten better over time. But there's still holes in their pipeline where even just adding small amounts of augmentation there can vastly increase the range and utility of the engine. And it's gotten a lot better about this recently, but it's basically been a priority for them relatively recently. One of the other things to say is that Epic Games essentially has had a relatively weak, on the Unreal Engine, has had a relatively weak presence on anything related to web technologies. They tried with some very impressive demos early on for being able to run entire Unreal Engine worlds entirely in the browser. This would work off of Mozilla's Firefox, some of the earlier builds of Chrome, and then some weird things happened and the whole thing went south. I think that some executives didn't get along, some markets imploded, something weird happened behind the scenes because this got aborted. Fortnite would have run in the browser if those conversations had gone just a little bit differently. And the reason why this is interesting is Sketchfab gives them another leg in the game where they can go back to Webland and say, anything we have for our virtual worlds, we're going to make sure there's a web presence for all of this that can be accessible at every endpoint, and we're not going to be locked out of the markets like Apple's trying to do to us.
So kind of related, Oculus, which is the main hardware people use today for VR, which is owned by Facebook, Oculus is rolling out a new software update. Starting today, it's filled with some nice quality of life improvements. The big one is that it's easier to invite friends and recent teammates who aren't friends to play a game or experience an app together. And when you're in the game or in an app, pressing the Oculus button will pop up the universal menu as usual, but soon more apps will show a new invite to app button next to which will, if friends accept your invite, you'll be able to see them in the menu. Kind of like we do with Clubhouse rooms today, where I'm in a room and I can see if there's friends of mine in Clubhouse and ping them in. You can now do the same in VR, essentially. The feature will roll out soon in games like Beat Saber, Blastin', Demio, Echo VR, and many others. If you don't want to corral the group within VR, an upcoming update to Oculus app on iOS and Android will let you create a multiplayer session then and there for supported games. And other features coming may or may not get as much use depending on how you use Oculus, but are nevertheless important. With the update, the browser app will, so there's a browser inside of VR, just like you use a browser on your computer, you can use a browser in VR. And now the browser will also have the ability to save and autofill passwords, secured with an unlock pattern like you do on Android phones, where you instead of entering a code, you create a pattern with your finger to swipe. So you can do that inside VR as well. Both the unlock pattern and the passwords are stored on the actual hardware device, Oculus says. And Oculus is also adding send and read receipts to Facebook Messenger app inside of VR, as well as reaction emojis straight from Facebook, admittedly. And yeah, so Messenger is getting better inside of Oculus as well. And here's a poll that says of 750 tech workers, half are at least somewhat interested in joining a union, and 50% say they are already interested in unionizing at their workplace. Oh boy. A decade ago, many tech workers seemed more concerned with their stock options than forming a union, is the headline. And this could be as if the big tech companies weren't in enough trouble already with the governments all starting to crack down on them. This is the one they're actually worried about, because this could happen quite quickly. And now they're getting hit on all angles. My goodness. Comments on unionization of the big tech companies. Let me crack this one open, because that's a humdinger of a headline that could have really strong implications. It says, in a survey of the tech industry workers, 50% of respondents said that they are very or somewhat interested in joining a union in their workplace, and more than 60% of millennials said they were interested. So it's the younger ones are more up for it. And a decade ago, many tech workers were more concerned about stock options, but in the last 2 years, a growing list of tech workers have formed unions or tried to, including a very powerful and rapidly expanding one at Google. And about half of all tech workers are now interested in joining a union, according to a survey conducted by Protocol in partnership with Morning Consult. 50% of survey respondents who identified as technology industry workers said that they were very or somewhat interested. And this was conducted between June 17th and July 2nd. And here's a quote. That's kind of crazy in some ways, because unions in tech aren't a thing. And still, one of the two workers are like, this is a good idea, says Wes McCannany, the director of Code CWA, which is a Communications Workers of America dedicated effort to unionizing the tech industry. So far, this union tech-focused effort represents the Alphabet Workers Union, which is Google, Mobilize, Mapbox, the New York Times Tech Guild, and it looks like the New York Times is unionizing as well, or trying to. The Office, obviously we've seen a ton of interest since we've launched, and the Alphabet Workers Union continues to grow. That's gotten a lot of play with a lot of folks. This is something really encouraging, according to the unions. In a survey, found very little difference in union interest by racial or ethnic identity. People who identify as black or white, for example, had nearly identical levels of interest, just above and below 50%. For the unions, this data helped confirm.
That's actually huge historically, by the way, with things. Like historically, that's one of the things that held back the labor movement, was they took a stance on saying, well, this is only going to be certain racial classes stuff. So that's actually a big deal there.
The data helped confirm the union's theory that questions of race had little relationship to whether workers are interested in unionization. And they said, I don't think race matters much in these things. Workers have issues. Tech companies have problems that are problems for everybody. And these issues around race that piss off all of the workers, because white workers are offended and angry that they can't retain workers of color. Anyway, but this will be interesting to see. And that's kind of... and then
there's a related news.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
Very, very, very weird historical context. And this, I'll be very brief on this. It's only 30 seconds. So I only learned this in the last 3 weeks with things, but apparently, literally in the 1930s, Leninist communist Russia, like freaking post Bolsheviks, right? They literally basically said, you know what, communism is awesome, but we should have more free market capitalism with small businesses. Let's import a bunch of factories from Ford and GM, and let's basically give stock options to everyone. This was literally Stalin. This was literally Leninist Russia with things. And then on his deathbed, he's like, "All right, this is cool. I think things are good. I'm gonna have a stroke now. I'm dying. it's all good. Just don't turn that thing over to Stalin.
Yeah, don't let Stalin have this. And then Stalin came in and had fun.
And then it all went to hell.
Yeah.
But the reason why I bring that up is a lot of these ideas about whether you have socialism or capitalism. The weird part is a lot of those corporations, while they're over in Russia, they took a lot of their management principles about 5-year plans back here to USA and other places. So if you ever wonder why the corporations run a little bit weirdly, and some of it's because they're actually running some Soviet concepts on top. We have a weird cross-section of skills. These are not necessarily orthogonal to each other as the Cold War communists versus Reds, kill the Reds, McCarthyism. It's actually, there's weird combinations of these things we haven't even imagined politically, and a lot of things can be structured economically. We've got a lot of range to work with.
So Cheryl, your related articles about Uber and Lyft drivers in several cities strike for right to unionize.
Yep.
Yeah, drivers for Uber and Lyft in major U.S. cities staged a strike on Wednesday, demanding better pay and the right to unionize, a sign of the intensifying fight by big gig workers for more labor protections. What happens if they use both apps and they unionize they fight to become an employee of both apps simultaneously? The demonstrators,
maybe just like a guild system.
The demonstrators organized by Rideshare Drivers United. Well, yeah, it's official. It's being officially organized by a union. Called for drivers and passengers to turn off Uber and Lyft apps on Wednesday and boycott services to advocate for better pay, working conditions, and the ability to organize and collectively bargain. Rallies were scheduled in cities including LA, San Francisco, Boston, Cleveland, Las Vegas, Pittsburgh, Denver, Baltimore, and Austin, Texas. The group didn't immediately offer an estimate for how many drivers participated. In New York City, the New York Taxi Workers Alliance is hosting an online seminar about proposed federal legislation called Protecting the Right to Organize, the PRO Act, in support of the strike. Worker-owned rideshare company, the Drivers Cooperative, stands in solidarity with their fellow drivers. To which...
Hey, Tyler...
just a quick comment, which is Uber very cleverly has dynamic pricing, and they can increase the price or the payment to the driver due to the lack of drivers, which in real time. So it's almost like a salary increase negotiation dynamically in real time based on the number of drivers willing to drive inside of the app. So if the number of drivers goes down, the salary goes up. And then some of the people striking say, you're going to pay me twice, 3 times, 4 times what I used to make. Fuck it. Okay, I'll drive that person to the airport for $100. Sure. And
these drivers are self-employed, right?
Yes.
Kind of.
So it shouldn't be unionized, isn't it? It's the same as the Deliveroo in UK.
It's all gig. It's like all gig jobs.
But it could be like an actor who could be a member of a union, like a SAG actor. They're, theoretically like a, gig worker, but they're members of unions and they work for different employers, so that's possible. But the other thing I was going to mention, Tyler, this thing that you're talking about unionizing and tech workers, what that article didn't go into is the distinction, because not everybody who works for a tech company gets stock options. So part of the problem is, how far do the options go down into a company? When Starbucks did their stock options, for example, Howard Schultz made sure those options went really deep. So even the baristas got stock options. And he's very proud that some people who simply just made coffee for people, but, made enough money through the stock options to buy houses. So, I mean, that's one thing that article doesn't mention.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. In a statement, Lyft said drivers in top markets, including California, are making more than $30 an hour. An Uber spokesperson said the company, quote unquote, will work to continue collaboratively with Congress and our diverse community of earners on meaningful solutions to improve the quality and security of independent work.
Earners, that's an interesting legal phrase.
Yeah.
The lawyers, I think, went through that very carefully.
Indeed, they did. And they've been through this. This is not their 10th time in this rodeo. They've been through this every 6 months since the beginning of the company. And they just now are yawning.
The Saudis have kept them afloat through so much of this.
At this point, it's free press for them. They actually applaud these kinds of things. It just is press, and they couldn't care less because they have a really clever kind of instant reaction, which is the dynamic pricing model inside of the app that pays people more if there's less drivers. And then drivers can see in real time that the prices are going up that they can earn to do the drives. And then more people start driving. It's very different from fixed price labor in like the supermarkets, when the supermarket workers wanted to unionize and they wanted to raise the prices. And they were right, but Uber,
I've got a very brief one.
Uber does dynamically raise the price on a minute by minute basis while you're outside striking. The price is going up in real time, and then more drivers come in, and then the price goes down. And so, good luck fighting that. Is my reaction. Go ahead.
Okay, so very briefly the thing. So dynamic pricing. So the price tag has a very specific time and place in history where it actually emerged. Wanamaker's, essentially, with the Quakers. They essentially thought that essentially for the majority of human history, haggling is the norm. Dynamic pricing, you basically go, that guy's dressed wealthily, I'm going to charge him more. And, oh, that person's dressed poor, he's not going to be able to basically afford my stuff. This was like, and then they should be able to argue it one way or the other. That's been the norm for human history. The Quakers essentially said, man, if we're arguing with our neighbors all the time about like pricing, we're not spending our time getting along and studying scripture and being all sorts of nice to each other like our very religious community says. We should just set a same price for everyone, and that's being a thing. So basically popularized it with some of the very first manufacturers essentially in the Northeast with the price tag, and it spread like wildfire everywhere. And it took a while to spread that internationally. Now what's crazy about this is when we're going back to dynamic pricing, what's interesting about it is going not just for the customers, but for the laborers themselves. That sort of dynamicism with the same algorithms, that concept is relatively new, and being able to have it so nuanced that every single negotiation you go into, basically the negotiation power is with the algorithm and the people that employ on their side. That's just crazy.
So check out the next headline. Here's the next headline, and see if you can put these two together. Argo forged to launch self-driving vehicles on Lyft's ride-hailing app. Oh, the very next headline in terms of popularity on the internet is that Lyft is now autonomous vehicle technology startup Argo AI and its backer and customer Ford plan to launch at least 1,000 self-driving vehicles on Lyft's ride-hailing network in a number of cities over the next 5 years, starting with Miami and Austin. Oh, you mean the cities where those people are protesting today to unionize? Oh, that's where you're releasing the autonomous cars.
Whoa!
What an interesting coincidence.
Oh, no.
There's no connection.
Just in time.
The first Ford self-driving vehicles, which are equipped with Argo's autonomous vehicle technology, will become available on Lyft's app in Miami later this year. Ford and Argo have had a presence in Miami for years now and have an active fleet of test vehicles. Austin will follow next year, with its remaining U.S. cities being added. You're arguing to unionize.
Drive the robot to the protest. You can drive the robot to the protest and say, "Hi, that's nice. I don't need you anymore."
I'm just imagining these autonomous vehicles with a special wrap on the side that says "Go fuck yourself." What?
Wow.
The autonomous cars are on the horizon as the Uber and Lyft drivers are fighting to get healthcare and paid time off and parental leave and higher salaries. And what, you're replacing us with autonomous cars? Okay, sorry. I don't see how that's going to work.
They don't have negotiation. Well, the negotiation leverage is temporary, essentially. Essentially, it determines whether or not, like the autonomous car stuff, they're saying, well, one day we'll have autonomous cars. That's legislative. That's not tech-wise. The moment they decide that essentially they're going to allow it legislative-wise, they can show it working in one region that we did a transition and it's a thing. And the question is whether or not the people that basically got kicked out, whether or not they vote for the politicians that are going to basically restore something. If they don't, then, oh man, not a good sign there.
This will really help us hone and figure out where the demand is and what peak demand looks like, which helps us figure out where we need to map, where we need to go, where we need to operate. It helps us spend our test resources wisely. Oh, not looking good for the drivers. That's amazing that those two headlines came back to back. But the next one is also incredibly interesting. Here it is. YouTube to pilot. Here we go. YouTube to pilot. Test shopping from live streams with select creators. What? YouTube's going to do shopping with live streams? No. What the hell is going on here? Who could have predicted that? YouTube will begin pilot testing a new feature that will allow viewers to shop for products directly from live stream videos. What? The feature will
Tyler, you wouldn't know anything about making money from YouTube, would you?
No. The feature will initially launch with just a handful of creators and brands, that are verified, identified. You know what I'm saying? You get it? Are you picking it up yet? that the company says,
Aren't you, Tyler? You are, right? You can start selling your cups and t-shirts there.
and as an expansion of the integrated shopping experience YouTube began testing earlier this year, the feature was designed only for on-demand videos and allowed viewers to tap into the credibility and knowledge of trusted creators in order to make informed purchases. The company explained at the time, it said that it would roll out to more creators over the course of 2021. More recently, YouTube tested live streamed shopping with a one-day shopping event focused on small businesses. YouTube video platform for years has been a powerful tool for product discovery, as it has more than 2 billion logged in users per month tuned into the service to watch product reviews, demos, unboxings, shopping hauls, and other content that could inspire future purchases. But creators who wanted to sell from their YouTube videos would often have to promote affiliate links to online stores through the video description or in video elements like cards and end of screens. And now they're doing live video shopping. Wow.
Imagine all those kids tapping on the iPads because mommy needs to get some time alone, and then all of a sudden they now have the purchase power of every toy they see on the infinite loop for those unwrapping videos. And they can order all of them all at once.
So for those who don't know why I'm so shocked, it's because I've been saying this was precisely, I've been ranting like a madman, like a maniac almost each day for nearly 3 months that this is coming. Precisely this, live stream shopping on YouTube. And I've explained it in intimate details over and over and over. And now the headline today is YouTube is pilot testing live stream shopping with select creators, which is another prediction I have, which is they're going to start doing identity verification, especially on live streams. And if you've been with us previously, you know why I think this. I've made this argument countless times. It's because when you're on a live stream, you can say crazy shit that governments don't like. If you do stuff non-live stream, it's searchable. They can find it. You did a tweet, they don't like it, they take it down. They may, and depending on the government you're in, they may come and have a nice cup of tea with you and want to know why you're saying bad things that hurt dear leaders' feelings. But on a live stream, well, they have to come find your house really quickly. And in China, they've done something truly genius. If you want to live stream on any app in China, you must register your face with their facial recognition systems, which is called SenseTime in China. And if you start live streaming, if you say something that hurts dear leaders' feelings, your live stream ends very quickly. Or if you try and very cleverly bring in somebody into your video who hasn't had their face registered, your live stream also ends instantly. And so they've effectively controlled narratives inside of live streams. They're going to do the same in audio without video. You know, in rooms of people. Imagine a big room full of clubs where people are talking on stages and then the audience and people are saying things live. Yeah, they're going to want to be able to make sure people don't say things that hurt dear leaders' feelings. And that's why there's going to need to be identity verification even on your voice. So, but YouTube's now piloting e-commerce, social e-commerce live streaming, as has been happening in China for many years, as is happening now in Thailand and all around Southeast Asia. And people are making billions of dollars doing it. That's why it's so incredibly obvious that it will be coming to the West any day. And here it is. The headline happened to come today while you were listening just now, but we've been saying it's coming for, 3-4 months. A team of his...
Yeah, this thesis, Tyler, so I just want to, I think it's worth reminding people because sometimes we have new people here, but the thesis on social shopping and live streaming and content creators kind of using that, I think you've been building it because I precisely almost know, because as soon as I invest my own money, like it's just I make calls on the market, just public things, and so I on the basis of some of this thesis growing, Shopify and a whole bunch of other things. It's been like 2.5-3 months, literally, when you intensively have been going on about that, it's like the headlines just keep coming. And some of the stuff that we've been going through over the last, last month, which builds on that, is the identification verification. But underlying that is a whole thesis on trust, because when you have thousands and thousands and thousands of people who claim to be, and I'm not talking about, like, there's a whole discussion about, the authoritarian states and what they will do. I'm out of that. Just let's say US and commerce, right? Let's just say that commerce in the US, like generally speaking, has been, we rely on brands, right? What brands do is they give you a proxy for trust. Retail brands give you a proxy for trust. I may not get ripped off if I go into that shop which has that brand. But now everybody's a freaking salesperson. Everybody's selling you financial advice. Everybody's selling you this. So, and if that person is a complete, like, there's no ID, like, there's absolutely no trust. So I can see where this is going. It's so early, but it's, I think that's going to be the next thing. I can imagine you like 3 months from now, Tyler, going, I told you so. This is coming.
Oh,
like, it's come now.
Well, so somebody who's in the audience named Hassan just did a tweet that I just retweeted on Twitter that says TNATW, Tech News Around the World, is basically an AI that is trained in real time over streams of news that is able to now predict the future with good accuracy. So when you do read every tech news headline every day, all of them, you do start to get the big picture of what's going on. But you have to have a stage of really smart people from all over the world of lots of different disciplines, hackers and lawyers and, geeks of all stripes in all industries, fashion, food, you name it, climate, fintech, medtech, edtech, all of it. And then when you get a room of smart people like that together, then you can start predicting the future rather accurately. And so anyway, a couple of the other very big headlines at the moment is that Tumblr is doing what they call Post Plus, which is their version of Twitter super followers, which is basically people are going to pay to get access to exclusive content of creators on Twitter and now on Tumblr. That's all coming very soon as well. And then, by the way, on the YouTube testing live streaming, YouTube has a huge advantage because they've already got video. TikTok and Snapchat and what's the other one? Instagram are all going to get into longer form video. And then they also will get into live streaming because all of those apps, if you haven't heard this rant before, and my apologies if you have, because I do it often, it's really obvious what's going to happen here. There's going to become e-commerce inside of all these social media apps because everyone's spending their time in the social media apps, not inside the Amazon app, right? So it makes much more sense to sell you the stuff in the apps that you're already looking at all day, like TikTok and Instagram and YouTube and whatnot. You're not spending 5 hours a day in Amazon. And when you do find an item on Amazon that you want to buy, statistically, people are going to look for that item on YouTube to see what it looks like, what the unboxing looks like, so they can really see what happens when they buy it. And nearly every item is available to see what it looks like when it's unboxed in YouTube. It's fantastic. Amazon doesn't have unboxing videos of the products when you're shopping there. And so if you're leaving Amazon in mid-purchase to go over to YouTube, why not just put a little buy button on that item that you're watching the unbox of and buy it right there? Well, because the reviews are over at Amazon. And you like the reviews at Amazon, but you like the unboxing video on YouTube. But if YouTube can start bringing over reviews, so that's an easy prediction. Easy peasy. And more importantly, the reviews of the sellers. So the YouTuber unboxers already do have a bit of trust in that soon they're going to start selling stuff. And when they start selling stuff, they'll get reviewed for it. And then Amazon's going to be screwed, frankly, because you're going to start buying the stuff directly from YouTube. And the YouTube creator is now going to be able to monetize the 1,000 videos that they did of all their previous unboxing videos. And all the videos going forward will monetize as well. But they're going to realize very quickly that they make a lot more money when they're live streaming than when they just have a static video. Because when they're live streaming, they can have an audience of 10,000 people that they're talking with in real time and answer the questions about the product in real time. And they'll have lots of products that they're going between. And Mondays will be tech gadget days, and Tuesday will be home gardening day, and Wednesday will be, outdoor activity day, and they'll just be selling endless products all the time. And this is what's happening around Asia. And they're making incredible amounts of money doing this, like obscene amounts of money. And you don't make that much money from a photo. you can make money from a photo. You'll make much more from a short video, and you'll make even more money from a longer video, and you'll make way more money from a live stream video. And that's how we know that TikTok and Snapchat and Instagram are going to go from photos to short videos to longer videos to live streams. And that's where the real money is. And to think otherwise is just stupid and foolish. It's so much money to be made from the live stream. By the way, Instagram does have live streaming right now. Most of those apps do have live streaming right now, but they don't have the buy button yet. But they're going to get it real soon. And as usual, YouTube has a head start because now all they have to do is add, they already have live streaming as well. Now they just got to add the buy button. And they're going to do that. And it's coming. It's coming not slowly. Every day we read headlines that continue to emphasize how this is all shaking out. And let's get into the most interesting stories. We've covered the top.
Tyler?
Yes, go ahead, Johan.
Good morning, boss. Sorry for the late arrival. I had other things to attend to. The thing is that I wanted to chime into this with the AI and tech news. I have secretly in the background brought in a couple of Swedish journalists from the news sector just to chime in and listen to the tech news, because I have a wild idea that this is actually a format that will work just wonderful for the ordinary news that we time to time bring up in this channel as well. And the Swedish Journalist Association, Journalistklubben, is actually lurking in the background here, listening to us. I see you guys, and don't be surprised if this format will surface in some sort or form from Journalistklubben in Sweden with Swedish news.
That's we see you guys. We see you down there. Make sure if you want to do this, if you're going to do it right, you got to get the fucking air horn. Okay, if you're
and the General Lee.
By the way, you got to jump.
You want to do so? Make sure Kev covers.
Let's show them how to do it. You gotta have the air horn. You gotta have the General Lee. Yeehaw!
You gotta have Cheryl. You gotta have Cammy. You gotta have. Evan,
we need our subway. We need our Subway article of the day.
Yes.
Subway,
if you're not covering the news about Subway sandwiches, you don't stand a chance. By the way.
The Soylent Green tuna. No, the thing, quite seriously, this is actually you, Tyler, and Kyle, together with Kyle and the rest of the gang. This is remarkable, and we are getting noticed. This is getting way more fun than it was in the beginning. It's been fun, all right.
Okay.
But this is getting deeper and deeper, and you
wait. You weren't having fun in the beginning. You were just sitting here.
He was bearing through it.
You should be aware.
Yeah.
What kind of feedback is that?
The very first tech news I joined was I can only describe it as a war. There were flowing accusations and hard word. It was really ready to rumble all the way. And I was like, these guys are nuts. Why am I even listening to this one? But it was something in the background, even though it was grenades bursting and artillery barrage from all sides. It was still the tone, the way the moderators tried to chime in to ease it down. But it was very, very harsh language. Accusations of being spies thrown here and there.
Well, in fairness, we have had our fair share of spies in the room, but yeah.
Most likely from the Swedish Journalistklubben.
Yeah. So let's get into the fun headlines that everyone's been sharing with us for the past 24 hours in no particular order. Here we go. Right off the top, an article from Forbes that robots 10 times faster, 10 times cheaper, modular development platform, and 3D printing lets you build autonomous robots like Lego. And that's a fantastic concept of 3D printable robots. Huzzah. That is fucking fantastic. Where's the air horn on that? So, because now you're going to be able to, the robots will be modular, kind of like kids play with Lego bricks. And you can 3D print Lego bricks. Well, you can print the different, people used to make little model cars. Well, a model car and a robot aren't that different, honestly. So it's just got some, they both have batteries. They both got wires, whatever. But now you're going to be able to 3D print the pieces in your own house. And that's a really cool concept. So you can read the Forbes article that I just twatted from the Twitter at TNATW. And as I'm going to tweet all of these articles now in rapid fire succession
Oh,
Yeah.
real quick,
Yep.
10 seconds. 10
Yep.
seconds. Creality
Yep.
3D printers are $200, and you can get them from essentially anywhere now, and they've basically become industry standard, and they can be upgraded to the $2,000 models. But the $200 is all you need to get in 3D printing. It's fun. It takes an afternoon to assemble. It's fun.
Yep. So we got the next one is also about start building your own robots with this nanobot construction kit. Just tweeted that out at TNATW, and go check out the TNATW account. I'm going to tweet about 40 tweets right now in real time, each of these articles that we talk about. And you should follow it anyways, because we find all the best articles that everyone's tweeting in, and we only tweet out the best ones, like this one. A British man arrested in Spain over the Twitter hack. We actually covered this. This is one of the biggest stories of the day. That 22-year-old UK citizen was now arrested in connection with the hacking of 130 high-profile Twitter accounts, including Elon Musk, Barack Obama, and Kanye West, to name just but a few. Also was hacking into TikTok and Snapchat, but now Uncle Sam told Spain to arrest this UK citizen, and now this 22-year-old from Florida is finger painting in a cell with his friend Jack Ma. So Brokit wants to be the Shopify of construction, raises $3 million. And with the pandemic affecting every aspect of life and industry, it's no surprise that digitization is coming to construction quickly. And there's going to be by the way, a company is going to become effing huge when other small startups start referring to themselves as the Uber of, we're the Uber for dog walking, or we're the Uber for, cats, or we're the Airbnb for,
Gosh darn you, wag.com. $300 million, and they went bankrupt from SoftBank.
Right.
I'm still bitter about that.
But now you're starting to see we are the Shopify of construction. We're the Shopify of this. We're the Shopify of that. And that tells you all you need.
They've made it.
Yeah, that tells you that Shopify is going to be a massive. It already is, but it has a lot of gas left in that growth tank. So next big article is that the Russia threat could see UK fighter jets operating from highways. Once again, the Royal Air Force has plans for a series of drills that will test its fighters' abilities to operate from dispersed airships as tensions start to rise, as nations start to economically decouple. Read Disunited Nations by Peter Zeihan if you really want to understand what's about to go down. And if you aren't able to read, that's okay, no judgment. Just go to YouTube University, and type in Disunited Nations. And then you'll have many videos to choose from of Peter Zeihan giving a synopsis of his book at many of the different high-profile events where he's paid to speak. And because people find his predictions fascinating, because they've been coming true for quite a while. And this is the third book he's written. And I think it's the most important book anyone can digest. But you don't have to read the book. Just go watch the YouTube videos. They're absolutely fantastic. But indeed, as the economies of the U.S. and China decouple, and as the U.S. brings home all of its kind of winds down its role as the global bodyguard for protecting all of the trade on the deep seas, indeed, Russia's going to start ramping up their rhetoric. Both China and Russia are going to ramp up their rhetoric and their military behaviors, and they are. And that's been predicted by Peter Zeihan for a long time. So it's happening now. We're seeing the headlines now. And if you want to know what happens next, go watch Disunited Nations. So, long story short, America wins. So a team of Israeli students just created honey without bees. As we talked about earlier today, somebody here in Clubhouse was going around talking like a madman that he figured out how to make honey without bees. And maybe
Tyler, Indian guy.
Oh, that was you, Safe. Yes. So I've got the article.
It was an Indian guy, not an Israeli guy.
Is he in here? Is he Israeli?
No. Indian.
Indian. Okay. This team of Israeli students just created honey without bees. Can you make honey without honeybees? According to 12 Israeli students who took home a gold medal from the International Genetically Engineered Machine competition with their synthetic honey project. The answer is yes. Yes, you can.
That's called syrup.
Honey syrup. Okay. So, facial recognition surges in retail stores. We covered that with our friend Charles here, who's the co-founder of Clearview AI, which is also in the news today from the New York Times, that they just raised another $50 million. And we covered that one. Thank you for that one, Heyman. And then Mahogany has this one, that the White House is trying to fix the problem of slowing COVID-19 vaccinations by engaging with an unlikely source. Fox News. Yes. And they're asking Fox, hey, Fox, please stop telling people not to get vaccinated, and please tell people to get vaccinated, because it turns out that the people who aren't getting vaccinated, we did a little number crunching, we did a little data, we did a little calculation with our geeks, and they found out that the people who aren't getting vaccinated watch your network. So could you do us all a little solid?
And they're dying.
Yeah. So by the way, if you want to be a network next year and you still want to have viewers who aren't dead, you want to have living users, you might want to tell them to get vaccinated. Just a little tip. We're just trying to help you out so that you still have people to watch your show next year so they don't die of COVID, because maybe you didn't think this through by telling them not to get vaccinated. They might not be around next year to watch your shows no more. So you might want to double think your strategy on this one, Fox. So,
but also long COVID is an issue too.
Right.
So even if they get it and survive, it's still long-term effects.
Right. But my point is particularly salient because they actually have a very old population watching Fox. So Netflix to include mobile games for subscribers. And the firm said on Tuesday that the time is right to learn more about how our members value games. And what they mean when they say the time is right is because they've kind of reached the end of sucking up all of the people who can subscribe to Netflix now that they compete with Disney Plus and AT&T along with Discovery and Warner and Apple TV and Amazon Prime TV, and it's now getting hard to compete. So they got to diversifying, and now they're getting into video games. And that's what they mean when they say the timing is right. And their stock did take a hit as a result of their quarter earnings report 24 hours ago, because they actually, for the first time, lost subscribers in the US and Canada. And that tells you it's getting very competitive in the video streaming, and that's why they're diversifying into video games. Yes, Chris?
Can we zoom out just for 1 second?
No.
How are you mechanically going to play this? Like, what controller?
Yeah.
Like,
they cost like $20 for a Bluetooth controller. It's not hard. You can even mail it to
No,
your
I know, but like, what to what end does this achieve?
I'm not sure. The crackdown in China is a hot mess, and it's coming for us, is the headline from the New York Times. Why the U.S. should fear China's big tech crackdown. The stakes of
our IPOs.
The stakes.
Will someone think of our IPOs?
The stakes of the U.S.-China war over the future of the internet are escalating. Next article: Huawei spends $1 million on lobbying in second quarter, boosting spending to counter Washington bans. According to the South China Morning Post, Huawei spending on Washington lobbyists increased from $180,000 in the first quarter to $1 million as the company was locked out of new infrastructure spending. And how China's flying submarine drone could change sea battles. We covered this briefly yesterday from the South China Morning Post. They have drones that can fly in the air and underwater, and they do this by very cleverly having two different sets of propellers, one optimized for air, one optimized for water. Very clever.
I was very disappointed watching that kind of thing. So the U.S. military has another version that they basically got a draft for like 11 years ago. That one essentially would work on like persistent stuff and just a float on up. The reason why it's a little more elegant is that you can have persistence. This thing essentially is going to require a lot of support infrastructure that I don't think they're properly accounting for.
Yeah, the thing that's wild about this that I didn't think about yesterday is that drones are now being militarized and used in bombing like an Air Force Indian base up near near Kashmir, near the border of Pakistan, or the disputed border of Pakistan and India. There's now been drones attacking an Indian Air Force base, for example, and somebody was killed in Libya with a Turkish drone. And now India itself predicted yesterday that there's going to be a drone attack on civilians in Delhi before Independence Day, which, remind me, is like August 14th or 15th. Someone from India can correct me on that?
Yeah, both.
Yes.
August 14th for Pakistan, August 15th for
Okay.
India.
So the government's even predicting there will be drone attacks. This is going to become a very big thing very quickly. They are going to happen. They're putting explosive on consumer drones that are, $200 drones. And you can do what people used to risk their lives doing suicide bomber missions. Now you can just blow up a $200 drone. And you can send a swarm of 10 of them, and really cause all kinds of havoc. And that's going to happen. And the question is, what are you going to do about it? And what are you going to do? Of course, you're going to scan the sky and have some new technology that broadcasts some kind of signal that makes it impossible for the drones to operate in the sky. If they have a link to a controller, it'll block that controller, and then it'll ostensibly fall from the sky. However, that doesn't work if the drone is coming at you from under the water. So if the drone comes...
I'm predicting...
Huh?
I'm predicting cities will have lots of nets and awnings incorporated into the architecture. It's just a beautiful little textile thing everywhere. It just so happens to basically be impenetrable by little tiny drones or whatever.
I'm predicting a nice, incredibly tall net around Gaza in the near future. So
it's like the 60s buildings designed in the 60s, like UC Irvine. They had these specially sloped walls that, like, I guess, like explosives would slide off of if they were thrown on them. So this is that kind of that future, except now it's with drones.
Tyler, real issue. Yeah. So just quickly, just the real issue is that imagine like 500 of them actually going in one direction. Yep. And, like the actual, combination within them is like one or two takes care of the actual whatever is coming towards them, like as a missile or bullet or something. And the rest of them actually go in a certain type of like trajectory where they actually pass on, and some of them are being sacrificed, taking care of the defenses, and the other ones actually move in. So imagine like 500 or 1,000 of them actually
drone
going
swarms.
in.
Yes, we don't have to imagine it. We see it all the time. They're being. You can make them fly in any arrangement you want. In China and Beijing, they're often used as a replacement for fireworks shows. They put colored LEDs on them. They can fly them in an animated swarms, where they make it look like a dragon is flying in the air, or they can even form a QR code in the sky that you can scan. So they're
with style, you go it all at once. Have the suicide drones form a QR code, and then have a dragon, and then attack you. It's like, this attack brought to you by, and it's like, and it goes boom.
this drone swarm attack.
Talk about shock and awe.
So just do you think we should have something to restrict them, like how we did nuclear bombs, a way to like how we did to the cars, how we have win numbers and everything? Do you think something?
I think Johan had an interesting thought. Did you not, Johan, about electromagnetic pulse bombs that would?
Yeah, they are actually already available. EMP bombs. Grenades for the 40 millimeter grenade launcher that you have as under barrel on some of the automatic guns. It actually more made to disable vehicles and helicopters, but it will be actually equivalent to work with these ones. And they are air burst. They don't need to hit something to detect. You actually can have a proximity on them. So it is near the helicopter or near the missile or near the car, it detonates. And it gives a small EMP burst that kills most of the electronics in any ordinary vehicle. These drones won't have the heavy shielding for that one of white cases, because you can't pay a Faraday's cage around everything in a small drone. So they will be easy killable by EMP bursts.
Yep.
So just to let you know, there's a couple of startups. There's a few startups working on anti-drone technology already. One in the Bay Area and a couple in India.
Yeah. We have a gentleman who joins us from Israel who's part of the military there, Amir, and he said that even now, he said that they have been attacked by drones from Gaza, and that they used a way to take over the signal between the controller and the drone and make the drones crash. And that wasn't really reported, but he's part of the Israeli military, and he said, yeah, this happened in the last kind of conflict in that region. So it's already starting. So anyway,
Tyler,
yes.
How many of us do you think we can carry such
We can't hear you, by the way. You sound like you're talking at the bottom of the ocean.
Sorry, give me one
second. So we're going to move along. Come back in a minute.
Can you hear me better now?
Barely.
Maybe he's in the shuck submarine from China.
It sounds like you're in a submarine.
I'll join back. Hold on.
Okay. Come back in a bit. The NHS app in the UK has quietly become a vaccine passport. More than 10 million residents in the UK have downloaded it, despite the government saying vaccine passports aren't a thing. And that was from Mahogany. Thank you for that, Mahogany. Now,
Social Security will never be used for identification.
That was the America's claim, right? In a hot job market, McDonald's, Cheesecake Factory, and other companies are getting back in touch. And the headline is from the Wall Street Journal, now hiring White Castle 4 years after you applied. And they're now responding to people who applied 4 years ago to say, hey, come on in for that interview you applied for 4 years ago. Data, look into it. PG&E which is Pacific Gas and Electric, which is the electric and gas
otherwise known as the California Wildfire Association.
Pacific Gas and Electric in reversal. Here's the headline: they're now going to bury the power lines.
Yeah, it was. I was explaining that. I was in Indianapolis, and I was explaining that to the people out there, and they literally were just hand pawing. They're like, "Do they still do rolling blackouts out there?" I'm like, "Yeah, they do it, and now they do it because of the wildfire risk, because they didn't bury the lines 50, 60 years ago when they should have."
So,
mind you, it's only 10,000 miles of, or 10,000, I don't know, miles of them, which is only the ones that are in the forestry, not all of them.
Right, the ones that are in fire-prone areas, they say, which is only 10,000 miles. I mean, that's not a lot, is it? I mean, you could do that in a weekend or so. So
just Americans
it's
don't
not actually that bad. Like, I know it sounds like a lot. But
I mean, China would do that like in a day.
4 days, but yeah.
But by the way, it's a lot of rolling hills and stuff. It's going to be kind of interesting to see them do it. So fires have become all but inevitable, and this is going to be challenging indeed. But thank you to that. Just retweeted that one out. You can read that. And mahogany.
Someone suggested the Boring Company could help do it.
Yeah.
You need a trencher and a plow. It's all you need. It basically goes about 10 miles an hour, 20 miles an hour.
Like people with farms do this all the time.
Buries it as you go. It's as fast as you can drive a plow. It goes pretty quick. They already have equipment for this. It's all automated.
No,
not automated, but it's
solar panels and fuck PG&E.
There we go. There we go. There it is. That's the right answer. Vaccination could be the new currency for online dating in India as the COVID-19 pandemic continues to make in-person interactions tricky. Some Indians surveyed by dating app Bumble believe that they would be up for sort of their own vaccine recognition system, so you could date people who have been vaccinated.
Oh, so vaccinated.
A smart city
Chris,
future
please don't go
for
there.
Virginia's Amazon HQ2 neighborhood, partnering with AT&T to build a comprehensive 5G network. It's a smart city future in Virginia's new. Let me put it this way. That's a tongue twister of a headline. Amazon is building a second headquarters. Their initial headquarters is in Seattle.
Another second headquarters. It's like the third, fourth, second.
They were trying to do it in New York. They got kicked out of New York. They went to Virginia, and now rather than just build any little headquarter, they're going to make a smart city out of it, make a smart neighborhood, the country's largest smart city, they're calling it. And as was predicted, yet again, here we go. As Google has now their project in San Jose, Facebook has their project in East Palo Alto, and now Amazon's doing what they're calling the country's largest smart city in Virginia as part of their second HQ. And this is, it was predicted by me like 2 years ago because I'm working on a similar project in Stockholm, and it occurred to me even then, oh boy, every big tech company is going to have to do this in the near future, which I've said here many times over the months, which is these cities really need to know what the future is going to look like in 10 years so that they can go ahead and buy those competing technologies now before they become existential threats. Which is why, I mean, that's just what's going on, right? It's like there's going to be new technologies that are going to explode and will enable other companies to surpass the current top five, Google, Facebook, Amazon, what have you. And they need to know who are these new technologies today. And to do that, you build a smart city, which is 10 years in the future, which will enable you to see what are the technologies that are going to come up before they come up, so that we can kill them or acquire them to maintain our power position. So they're willing to invest billions of dollars to build smart city sandbox labs to be able to neutralize future threats to maintain their tech hegemony. It's very interesting if you think about it.
It's a good thing that we've got good regulatory support for these cities to make sure that they can support this and then this endeavor.
China's next...
With that antitrust stuff.
Next big article from Faraz, how China's cybersecurity laws could backfire unintelligent or dumb EVs and their autonomous. China's next target is the troves of data in your car. Beijing has ambitions to lead the global race to EVs and autonomous cars. Its cybersecurity crackdown could put all that at risk. And next article. First legal complaint from Pegasus victims over latest spyware revelations has landed in France, brought by two journalists supported by pressfreedom.org. Their statement says more complaints are...
What, that took in like 4 days? Man, where they really sleeping on the job there.
Well,
come on. It's like...
Let me do this. We got to get to the Ben & Jerry's article, because Ben & Jerry's decided they're not going to sell in the West Bank. Mind you, Ben & Jerry's are two Jewish dudes from Vermont. And they decided they don't want to sell in the West Bank, in the occupied areas. So Israel's prime minister made a big statement, saying he's going to, retaliate against Ben & Jerry's ice cream. And
think he goes to the shop himself? He's just really pissed about this.
Haagen-Dazs is quite nice too. Haagen-Dazs.
The Department of State in the U.S. has come out and made a big statement against this. Now, that's interesting, because simultaneously there's this thing called Pegasus that came out. You might have heard about it. Like all the prime ministers, all the presidents, kings, all these top
fighting over ice cream right now.
Yeah, and that's happening in the U.S. And it turns out Joe Biden's phone was hacked, and everything's going. Oh, and by the way, the chief negotiator on the Iran deal, his phone was part of Pegasus, has been reported by the New York Times, and all that's happening, and not a peep out of a single politician in America, let alone the State Department. Not a
Tyler, I have a conspiracy theory.
But Ben & Jerry's stopped selling in the West Bank, and the State Department needs to make a statement against its own U.S. company?
Tyler, that's because there's a federal law. There's a federal law about boycotting Israel. So you're going to see already it's happening. There's pressure on state pension funds to dump whatever the parent company now is at Ben & Jerry's.
Ben & Jerry's owned by Unilever.
Correct.
It's not Ben & Jerry's anymore.
It is Ben & Jerry's. It's just owned by Unilever.
Are they still a public benefit corporation?
I don't think it's also owned by Unilever.
Well,
okay, so the largest ice cream maker in the world.
They're saying dump Unilever stock. Yeah, it was an article on that. I should have sent it to you, but okay.
But the bigger question is, why isn't the U.S. making any comment about Pegasus when they're so quick to make a comment about Ben & Jerry's?
Probably because the U.S. government spies on everybody themselves, and they might even use Pegasus.
That's preposterous, Ken.
Because Americans are very serious with their ice cream.
I think Cheryl wins.
Does everybody remember when the United States got caught spying on Angela Merkel? And then the United States had to apologize to the German chancellor because the United States was spying on Germany, even though they're an ally. Yeah,
I think Cheryl's got the right answer. We take our ice cream. We have priorities: ice cream over Pegasus,
and Subway sandwiches.
But Tyler, you picked up this article as when you first, I think, a few days ago, right? You kind of brought it up. This is odd. This is odd. And I've been listening, and I thought, why is Tyler picking on this? Just know how you work a little bit here. And so, and you continue doing this. And I think I just love it, the way you kept asking that question, even today as you went to that. And it may just be what Cheryl's saying, we all just love ice cream, we end up there. But there's some way of exploration that comes out of this kind of way of doing it that I just find fascinating. So Tyler, this is just great.
It's a little peculiar.
Just an odd headline.
Within hours.
Yeah, peculiar headline.
Yeah, big headlines in the U.S. The U.S. State Department makes a strong comment against its own U.S. company in regard to, not deciding not to sell somewhere. How dare you not sell somewhere? You're a private company.
Dan just mentioned it's part of you.
You don't. That's not your choice, right? As a private company where you get to sell. We're going to force you to sell somewhere.
How many shops is this? Is it 1-2 shops?
Great question. Yeah, exactly.
It's like a nice cream stand. It's literally not even a shop. It's just
it's a great point. How much Ben & Jerry's is being consumed in the West Bank? That's a great point. And by the way, they're still selling in Israel.
The thing is, it's not like they have a climate that you would have. It would be nice to have an ice cream or so. It's fucking polar bears and penguins all over there.
I mean, can you imagine if it's the mobile one? They can just like move it 3 blocks over, and it's like, all right, we've made a political statement. Call the State Department. We've moved 3 streets. We moved the street cart.
By the way, we have to actually listen to the Israeli side of the story. They are saying this is a new form of the actual terrorism that's by the president of Israel. So here we go.
Taking ice cream away or putting.
God knows what he's saying. It's in their main newspaper. Is Haaretz.
Yeah.
And
they are really trying to start the NSO group right now. They are really trying hard to come. Okay, the USA and the Israelis are saying, what can we do to distract away? What would everyone care about? You're getting screwed with your NSO stuff. It's going to come out. The NSA was sponsoring, working with it. How we can distract everyone? I know, ice cream. People get really pissed about this.
Now we're getting somewhere. Hang on here. This is all a distraction about Pegasus.
Yes.
Never mind that.
And they're all fighting over this ice cream cart, just going across the border back and forth.
The interesting question is why Unilever would do this. I mean, that's a huge multinational company.
It's not Unilever's choice. Unilever has 100 brands.
No, I'm talking about Ben & Jerry's.
Yeah, Ben & Jerry's is one of 100 brands under Unilever.
Jason had a really funny comment to say.
If Unilever was behind it, you would have 100 brands leaving the West Bank, not just Ben & Jerry's. Ben & Jerry's, this is very characteristic of Ben & Jerry's, by the way. They do things like this all the time, against Unilever's wishes.
But Jason? Ben & Jerry's don't run it anymore.
The people running it, we have to investigate that. Whoever's running it, this is very characteristic of the decisions of whoever is running it.
Yeah, they have autonomy in the past, but Dan's point that Unilever could have vetoed it, right? Like just as a big corporate.
Maybe not.
And they may veto one or two things. Yeah.
Let's see if there even is a Ben & Jerry's store there.
I can see the future headlines looking back to when World War III started, and it was over an ice cream stand owner in the West Bank getting upset.
You're exactly right.
They call them the airstrike for the cybersecurity response, for kinetic response for the cybersecurity part. It's all part of that ice cream stand. It was all running out of there. They call them the jets.
Okay, next headline. Businesses and journalists can legally ask if you have been vaccinated. HIPAA does not apply. USA Today. I'm tweeting it out now. You can read it from the Tech News Twitter account at TNATW. Well, let's go. That one deserves that one's a little hot. Let's dig on that one. Fact check.
Where's Jen?
Yeah, this is right up her alley. Fact check. Businesses can legally ask if patrons have been vaccinated. HIPAA does not apply. This, according to the USA Today. The claim is HIPAA prevents anyone from asking if you are vaccinated. A mask wearing and social distancing guidelines Take two. As mask wearing and social distancing guidelines relax for fully vaccinated people, businesses are navigating how to implement new policies in their stores. Many businesses are ending mask requirements only for fully vaccinated customers. Vaccine opponents, including Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia, are using the occasion to restrict the false claim that HIPAA federal privacy law protects individuals from being asked about their vaccination status. On May 18th, several GOP members refused to wear masks on the House floor in defiance of House rules on mask wearing, including Greene. When asked whether she was vaccinated, Greene told reporters that asking about her vaccine status was a HIPAA violation. Greene is not the only one spreading this claim, which has spread widely on social media in recent days. The rule is simple. HIPAA protects every American from disclosing any of their health records to anyone, claims an image posted on Instagram May 13. The poster clarified she was referring to the vaccine and mask requirements in her caption. If anyone asks about your vax status, there we go. This article is USA Today's website's got some problems. Here we go. If anyone asks about your vax status, tell them that they have no right to know, she wrote. This is authoritarianism, by the way, literally communistic. Fact check. CDC's new guidelines for fully vaccinated people is not out of the blue. Other examples of social media posts with the claims can be seen on Instagram and Facebook. The HIPAA Act is a law that prevents healthcare professionals from sharing private health information without a patient's permission. But experts agree that the interpretation of HIPAA cited by Green and others online is inaccurate. The law has no bearing on who can ask or answer questions about health status outside of the healthcare setting, they said. USA Today contacted several accounts that posted the claim. Experts say HIPAA does not cover vaccination questions. USA Today debunked a similar version of this claim last summer when mask opponents encouraged others to claim HIPAA allowed them to avoid mask mandates. Alan Meisel, a professor of law and bioethics at the University of Pittsburgh, told USA Today at the time that HIPAA's rules apply only to sharing information between covered entities. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services described covered entities as health plans, healthcare clearinghouses, and those healthcare providers that conduct certain healthcare transactions electronically. He said that the claim that HIPAA protected people from being asked about their vaccine status is utter nonsense. It in no way prohibits business owners and other individuals from asking people if they've been vaccinated, he wrote in the USA Today Mail. In fact, it doesn't even prohibit healthcare entities mentioned above from asking people if they've been vaccinated.
Hey, Carl, could I add something here? Sure. That I think would be helpful. So where I live in Nevada, in Las Vegas. The casinos know exactly which employees have been vaccinated, which ones haven't. They've got special cards to indicate vaccine status, because up until where COVID now has gone up here, so now they're requiring all the employees to wear masks again. Some of the casinos went to a status that if you were vaccinated as an employee, you didn't have to wear a mask, and if you were not vaccinated, you had to wear a mask. And so there was no issue, about even there of the employer knowing the vaccine status of the employees. And that's even with a lot of employees having unions here too.
Two quick questions. Does this apply to employees, essentially, with the recent interpretation there? And the other part was, we were talking about vaccines versus masks. It takes time for people to respond with these protocols. And what's fascinating is because we're being so slow to respond to things like Delta, like the CDC is still saying, if you're fully vaccinated, you have no worries. Don't worry about masks. Don't worry about anything else. And it's I was just checking the guidance literally just a few days ago. And so it's going to take, if our response time is still in the matter of 30 to 60 days, that might actually be too slow for some of those more recent variants.
You just have to use common sense, man. I was in the freaking casinos and no one's wearing masks except for the employees. And, it's going to spread, period. It's not to judge or not to be, but it's numbers, right?
Common sense is not.
Yeah, common sense isn't common. It was disproven at the years. It's done right at the bottom. I wanted to ask a question based upon what's it called, facial recognition in casinos, and whether there's a use case for seeing if people are counting cards and people who will spend more, etc., and seeing people who are inebriated, etc. So yeah.
Okay, here we go. Hang on tight. Twitter for iOS begins testing dislike button for some users, so you can dislike what people are saying on Twitter.
Bring back Dig.
Yeah. Oh man, Kevin Rose. So
I love Dig.
Yeah, Dig was great. So Pegasus. It says Princess Latifah and Princess Haya numbers among the leaks now being named as part of Pegasus victims. I don't know who Princess Latifah and Princess Haya is. Anyone can help me with that?
Wait. They've got the celebrity list too. Man, this article's going to go on forever.
Of Queen Latifah?
Is it the Dubai?
I don't know. Princess. I know Queen Latifah, but I don't know Princess Latifah.
I'm joking.
Yeah. Maybe it's her daughter. Phone numbers used by two Dubai princesses have. What happens? Oh. Wait. What happens when Princess Latifah?
The real Queen Latifah.
Yeah. What happens when Princess Latifah becomes queen? What are we going to call her then?
She's not going to become queen this one. If you read on, this is a long story.
Okay.
Yeah, that one's got a lot of context.
Yeah, go on, Chris, if you want to say a couple of things about it, because this has been going
Princess
for a while.
Latifah
Right?
is the daughter of the ruler of Dubai. So I don't know if she could.
She's an estranged.
She tried to run away.
Oh yeah.
He leaned on everyone international to bring her back. So there's a lot of subtext.
Oh boy.
Behind that.
Yeah, no wonder she had.
In fact, some very powerful people, kind of not breaking their own laws, but kind of just there's a lot of back scratching on that one.
Okay. Some mysteries are better left unsolved, perhaps. So, initial fleet of autonomous food delivery robots have arrived already, ascending onto the University of campus at the University of Nevada. Initial fleet of autonomous food delivery robots. Starship Technologies, which is the original creator of this technology, out of remind me, Estonia, and which has now been copied by identical carbon copy by Amazon and also by Yandex out of Russia with this really cool autonomous robot delivery system. And it looks like college, for some reason, they're testing these all out on college campuses. The Starship Technologies is doing University of Nevada, and Russia was doing it near, I believe, NYU. Anyway, very interesting.
The students won't attack the robots, and if they do, you basically can say, "Oh no, it's just typical stuff." So when they do attack the robots, it's different.
Yeah.
Also, their mapped campuses is a big deal.
Yesterday, your screen was built with fossil fuels, meaning plastics, and today it's built with biology. As why pump out oil out of the ground to make chemicals when microbes can make higher quality materials that are better for our planet? Is the headline from Forbes. And so tweeting that one out. Dan, that's a good opportunity for you to jump in with any green tech news. Should we do green tech?
Well, I sent you a whole bunch of links. By the way, back to the PG&E thing, they admitted that they helped cause the Dixie Fire, which was one of the really big ones. And there's a lot of news about how New York is covered in smoke from the California and Oregon, the Northwest fires. So it's... I guess, and there's other continuing stories on that's coming for the wealthy nations, climate change, that kind of stuff. So, but I just sent you a whole bunch of things.
Yes.
Don't have to.
Tyler, before we move on, I was actually asking about the drone topic that we were talking about earlier.
Okay.
Will an individual, a civilian, if they're at risk, will they have something to protect themselves from the drones?
You know what, guys? I have to apologize. I was supposed to have a hard stop at 4:00. I have a guest here. I got to run. Sorry about that. So we will pick this up next time when we meet again in 5 hours. And
see you later.
Yes, see you later, everybody.
Bye, everyone.